you know. So Purva Ashadha. What's not to like about Purva Ashadha? First of all, I think everybody loves Purva Ashadha. It's so beautiful. It's like, that's what it is. It's beauty. We see, well, let's just get started. It's ruled by Venus, the invincible star, the power to invigorate. So there's so much energy there. It brings to life. It's like, well, it's like Venus. It's like that beautiful woman, like bringing invigoration to the old man in a sense. It's that power. It brings some extra life. And Purva Ashadha, it's funny, I was looking at Purva Ashadha yet last night. I was kind of going over some notes and stuff. And I do this sometimes. I think we all do. I got a little bit confused in my mind with Purva Falguni as I was kind of looking through all these names and looking through all of this. Um, and Purva Falguni, there's of course there's a big similarity between. They're both ruled by Venus. And Purva Falguni is more that central pillar of everything. But Purva Ashadha still attracts a lot of attention. Right? It brings a lot of it's that it's still that almost very similar sort of artistic theme we get, but it's brought up to kind of a higher level of theology in a sense here now. Before it was sort of just about entertainment. Now it's about something higher, something greater. So that's that invigoration. The former invincible, the previously undefeated, the unsubdued. One of the things I did notice with a lot of these people is the first half of life is very different than the second half. They really did make their marks quite early in life. Someone like Greta Thunberg, for example, or that I was just looking at these two, the Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta Thunberg, and I love when you see very different people like that, both with similar positions. So you get that sort of that thing coming early in life. Now, this is, I think, one of the things I find almost most interesting about this. The main deity is Apis, the goddess of water. Now, when you look into this nakshatra, what I started to see a lot of, it's very plastic. It's very sort of flexible that way. And plastic is something we can melt it. We can bring it down and make it into a liquid and mold it. And there's a lot of that going on here, a lot of that sculpting, a lot of that molding. I've got some clients with positions here. They do like the 3D printing. One of the fathers of engineering who really started using cast iron a lot. Cast iron was like it was like the plastic before we had plastic, because you could shape it, you could melt the metal and mold it and shape it, and so there's that sort of energy of that here as well. Now, I was reaching a little bit with some of these Western deities, Ketu, the goddess of whales, teamsters, sharks. She's sort of the one that upsets the boat a little bit. And there is that whenever you see those pictures of Venus, there's always the big crashing waves, right? It's not a simple, it's not a gentle nakshatra. And well, actually, if we look down, we see the nature is very fierce, severe, right? It's quite beautiful and lovely. We all like it, but there's a lot of power there. There's a lot of energy there. So we get like Aphrodite, for example, just the Venus of Greek literature as well. Varuni, the female counterpart of Varuna. I'm not sure if I've really looked into some of these too much yet, but Vishnu and Lakshmi sitting on Sesha on the cosmic ocean, and the mermaid. The mermaid's kind of a nice, again, that beautiful woman. Purva Ashadha rolls over the tender-hearted, the navigators, the fishermen, aquatic animals, truthful, pure, wealthy, constructors of bridges, those who live by the water, aquatic fruits and flowers. And so, of course, we can see lots going on by the sea, which is funny here because we have Dana wandering around on a boat, and she didn't claims to not have any of these. Maybe in Navamsha. And we have Emmett
No,
wondering,
I do. I do. I have Mars in Purva Ashadha.
okay, yeah, okay, there we go. So that activity on there, yeah. So really roaming around on the water. So there we go. So so perfect. So then we get well, we'll just scroll down and look at these. We get that Brahmin, the educated priestly class, and they are usually quite knowledgeable. Knowledge of again, that's that similarity with Purva Falguni. One of the great similarities here is a sort of higher knowledge of aesthetics coming into this. And again, all the Venus nakshatras have something to do with aesthetics to a certain degree. Um, and so this is the Brahman, so quite high knowledge. The motivation is moksha, so very spiritual nakshatra, a lot of spirituality coming in here, and it's very fierce. This is a little bit again, we think of the ocean, but it's they're not afraid to they're not afraid to destroy things in order to get moksha, in order to get higher wisdom, and they're not afraid to kind of bring out that more fierce, severe side of themselves. This also, like, it's that image sort of spirituality we get here as well. And so it's a bit of that surface spirituality. So you get the spiritual sort of spiritual art, the spiritual image. We talked in the fear some self-flagellation, so some self-punishment often comes into here. And of course, that's when it's working at its highest, when we punish ourselves and we're not punishing others. Very Rajasic as well. So it's interesting. It's got that Brahman and moksha qualities of sort of higher spirituality, but then very severe, fierce and very Rajasic. Um, the energy of the East. This is also the energy of sitting in the East. Isn't that Kubera in the East? No, it's Indra in the East. Anyway, so this is where things get started to a certain degree as well. The air, it's very changeable, and so it's very mobile, and I think that is sort of that, there's a little bit of that almost like water and air mix. Again, we see in the a lot of the description of that, the big waves. In a sense, it's human, it's only human, and so you can't expect too much out of these folks. um Very pita, that heat is there, mixing with the rajasic, mixing with severe, that sort of stuff, sort of downward looking, again, sort of digging. Balanced is interesting. That flies in the face of all my talk about the waves, because this is sort of like balanced and looking for that level approach as well. And we get Vishnu. Oh, I got these in funny
Or
order.
the waves happen out of an attempt to reach balance, right? Like it's something that throws it off. That's the cause of the wave. I think at the end of the day, the wave is there to help suppress.
And that might be it. We talked about, say, that invigoration and maybe the invigoration of the old man with the young woman, and maybe that's it. Everything rises, and maybe the Purva Falguni, they're kind of working to find that, like, get themselves together again in a sense. Not lose control over the beauty on the external, something like that, perhaps. Um, Not so big surprise to see that's a female nakshatra, and it's Vishnu, and so it is also about maintaining and sustaining, and that's sort of what the um that's what a lot of the sexual themes of this is really all about. That's really the main purpose of sex. We get the guru of this, it's Sage Pulaha. He's the guru of all the animals, all the critters and mythical beasts and all of that sort of things roaming the forest. Um, and so the father of that, and so quite close connection with animals and all of those sorts of things. In this regard, we think the connection with water, and so all the beasts that are roaming the waters as well, in that sense. Um, there was something here about King Kardama. Oh, Kardama, one of his sons, Kardama. Kardama means mud and the muck of the water, and so maybe that is sort of the waves and the storms that are coming, and the goodness that sort of comes out of that. The male monkey, it's that creative, that sexual creative. Male monkeys, they're polygamous. I don't know if you've ever sat around watching the monkeys, those little brown monkeys, especially in India. I call them tree rats. They're just running around, just humping everybody. boys on boys, boys on girls. It doesn't matter, young, old, it doesn't matter. They're humping it. Um, and so a lot of the prostitution themes we see in this nakshatra kind of match the male monkey to a certain degree. And very flamboyant to get their mates. They'll if they sort of take over some of the women, they'll kill the babies that don't belong to them in some cases. And so it can be quite a brutal thing that way. They're well known to have herpes. Monkeys get that. And so we would think that there's going to be some of those similarities in these people. The Ashoka tree, gosh, I can't believe I haven't written very much about the Ashoka tree. But really, in a sense, it sort of says it all. The Ashoka tree being similar to the hawthorn, sacred to yakshas and the fairies. That's sort of the fairies, I think, is a big part of this nakshatra as well. The tree deities, these are where I live. One of the things I love about where I live in Varanasi, so I stay with Sanjay there, and next door we have this old farm. They've got about a dozen buffalo over there, maybe still. And there's a couple old trees there, really, really old trees. And especially the mother in the farm next door, that's where the trees are sort of coming out of. And so you can see her quite often still giving worship to the trees. And these are sort of the oldest deities. And they still do a lot of this in India, this sort of worship to the trees. And that's really what they're worshiping, these fairies that are living in the trees and the goddesses that are living in the trees. And they're very gentle and they're very sort of like these nature fairies. Well, they're showing they're little fairies. We say this when we're little kids. At least I did when I was a kid. You big fairy. And you're talking about this weakness that's going on here. And in the philosophy class, I talked a lot about that defenselessness of Venus. And so there's a lot of that here, and that's what the fairies are. It's like nature is defenseless. Those trees are defenseless, right? They're just weak little fairy beings. You give them a push and they fall over sometimes. Like, it's up to us to sort of protect what is defenseless, what can't fight for itself. And well, the fairies, they try to fight through magic, right? They try to give us magic and wonder, and we see the forest and we think, wow, right? And so then we don't want to destroy it. And so that's part of what we find in the Purva Falguni here as well. That's very, very lovely. The other thing about Ashok and the other thing that the hawthorn have in common here, well, I mentioned it, but they're very good tonics for the heart. And that's one thing I saw here, maybe not so much the heart. This surprised me, actually. This is maybe why I was getting confused with Purva Falguni as well, because I was seeing a lot of blindness here. I saw quite a few people that were blind. But I also expect a lot of heart conditions also that we see in Purva Falguni. So there's a Pushkara Amsha here. There's in a lot of nakshatras. So we'll keep that in mind, the Libra Navamsha of this. There we go. There's Apis, the cosmic ocean. This sort of connects. They talk about the cosmic ocean, but this is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is sort of more global in outreach, whereas the Pisces gets more the universal in outreach. And so this is still getting like a broad outreach. It's still the oceans of the world. You could say it must be also connected also to the Milky Way properties as we're going through, right? This churning of all the milk that's been going on since Jyeshta, Mula, and now we get to this more cosmic ocean. I've got some notes here. Yeah, that's just talking about the waves. We get Aphrodite here. This is the Great Mother. Where is it? Aphrodite? Anyways. So this is Aphrodite. This is that erotic beauty, the sexual seduction, the sort of prostitution that happens. We might even find a sense of like selling oneself going on here as well. That's really what the prostitution is. And I've talked about this a lot with Venus, where it's not what is it? It's when we talk about prostitution, it's not just that like selling of the body. It's any of that selling oneself out in some way. It's that sort of materialistic perspective we have on things. We give something of ourselves up in a sense. So we get that here. She's also, there's some militaristic sort of sense to her as well. She wants to, I think there's a sense in Purva Ashadha that's a little bit of the proselytizer, the one that wants to make converts to a certain degree. It's said that when Kronos severed Uranus's genitals and threw them behind them into the sea, the foam from his genitals gave rise to Aphrodite. She's depicted as beautiful, sensuous, nude, nubile, unmarried woman. Though the consort of the god of war and the blind singer Nemoculus described her as the wife of Hephaestus. I'm going to botch all my pronunciations of this, so you know. It's funny, I always loved Greek philosophy, loved it, and all the Greek history. I studied it like crazy. I never took a class, so I never actually heard people saying these names to me. So anyways, so she's said to have been born fully formed adult woman and had no childhood. And so that's interesting. So some of that like sexual stuff comes in here as well. We see we talked about like having their successes early in life. So we see again, they don't have their childhood. They child actors and things like that. They get involved. Greta Thunberg went as a young age into the activism. That other guy I mentioned, Kyle Rittenhouse. Sorry, those two names are on my mind because I was just looking at them before class. But anyways, so we see that that loss of childhood here. So Aphrodite said to be the waiter of the giants and the horrible beasts. She's almost always accomplished by Eros, the god of lust and sexual desires. Her main attendants were the three charities. And so we sort of see this to a certain degree. The most beautiful women in our society always end up with like the boxers and the fighters and the gods of war in a certain degree. There's sort of that pairing off of those two sides of it. It's interesting that they mentioned this blind singer because that's what it was. It was like Stevie Wonder had this. There was she was a blind track and field star, but there was a couple blind singers that also had this. So it's funny that he comes up just as describing her. Very sexual, very fertile. Again, the waiter of giants. She's the one that can sort of like, you sort of see in modern times where they've got the female bouncers kind of idea, where she can get in between these big, powerful men, and they don't want to hurt the girl. So they kind of calm down, right? The little beautiful girl gets in front, says, hey, get out of the way, stop fighting. And they don't want to hurt her. And so they step back. And so that's some of that peacefulness and waiter to the giants and the horrible beasts. So her main symbols being the dove, peace, anemia and myrtle flowers, roses. So we could also look into those and probably find some medicines related here as well. She has strong associations with the sea. We talked about all of that, ruling over the water flower. The sparrows is very nice. The geese, ducks, swans, a lot of these sort of free birds in a sense. Other products of the seas you made reference, conch shells, dolphins, mermaids, all of that. Apples and pomegranates. Eaten for birth control. That's kind of interesting. I think I have heard that about pomegranates before, but natural birth control, lots of apples and pomegranates, beautiful salad. She has much in common with the Egyptian goddess Ishtar, who I didn't do my research on, and some suspect her stories relate to baptism in some way. Stories praise the feats and vigor of the women looking over her worship. Women of Lemos once refused to offer sacrifices. She took her revenge, made them all smell horribly, so their husbands stopped having sex with them. Women led women to murder their husbands, their slaves. This is very much the free woman here. It was after this that Jason and the Argonauts landed in the sea full of sex-starved women, and with Aphrodite's approval, they impregnated all the women and repopulated the island. The natives again showed respect for Aphrodite. So there's these kind of things coming up. Again, you can kind of read this on your own. If I'm not finding too much to jump onto, I'll keep scrolling. So we get the goddess Venus, that ideal woman for sexual pleasure. The yakshas, I sort of talked about them already. The hand fan. So we get this, the hand fan is interesting. I didn't, must have read about that, wrote about the hand fan someplace else, because the hand fan has quite an interesting history, actually. It was, it's a very much a status symbol. Just like a beautiful woman, like Aphrodite, can be a status symbol. And so it was, you could at certain times in certain places, different fans would associate different statuses and things like that. It's interesting in modern times, we don't really use the hand fan, but it's still very, very popular in the transvestite communities, actually, and the gay communities, but especially with like the cross dressers and the transvestites wanting to become a woman. It's that sort of like that hand fan mystery hiding, kind of hiding their true identity in a sense behind the fan, right? Because if they sort of hide that jaw structure and the Adam's apple, you wouldn't even know sometimes that it's woman. So there is that sort of thing. This matches with some of that Vata energy, or sort of the air energy that we see in here, even though it's very much related with the water. Again, that almost makes us think of sailing. We think of the hand fan. It could also be the sails of a ship and things like that. The winnowing basket. This is, I still see them using this a lot in India, especially the poorer people, where they still do sift through all their rice and all their dal before they make it. And you got to think they're cooking for like a whole family. They're cooking for sometimes a dozen people or more. And those are usually the ones. And so they spend the morning. It was the Naga tribes. I remember they had this, oh, it was so beautiful. You get up in the morning, and some of the young people would sort of sit around, and they're all Christian tribals. These are the ones with the face tattoos and everything, but they're all Christians. And one of the boys would come with his guitar and he could sit there and sing. And the girls would sit there with their winnowing baskets, making sure all the stones and all the chaff was out of the rice and out of the dal and that sort of thing, and just sort of cleaning it so we weren't, you know what it's like when you're eating rice and you chew on a rock. Well, that's what the winnowing basket is, sort of trying to get that out. And then also with wheat and things like that, it helps sort of separate the wheat from the chaff as well. And anyways, such a lovely ritual they had in the mornings, singing these lovely Christian songs, and some were in English and some were in Naga, but they were the same tunes as the English Christian songs. It was really, really lovely. So we get that with the winnowing basket. And that's also sort of removing the outer layers, removing the shells. We saw the connection with shellfish and things like that here as well. And so that vulnerability that we talked about. So we think of like when a shrimp and some of these crustaceans, they sort of, their shells don't grow with them. So when they grow to outgrow the shell kind of cracks off and sheds off, and then they're super vulnerable to anything. And then the new shell sort of grows back. And a lot of times they hibernate, they go in a little cave or something like that for that kind of thing. So, oh, that was the other thing I noticed. Yeah, if we consider this nakshatra in light of COVID, we get the face masks also with here, the serum and apis. That's right. Yeah, I remember when some of these transits were going through here, I was just looking at all that. And so we got that serum and the vaccination also sort of related with this as well. And then it sort of progressed into later Satabhishek and things like that.
I just wanted to add, sorry, Mike, like the hand fan, actually, we still use it a lot in Spain. And historically, it has like even a language. Like there is a kind of secret language with the hand fan, for example, between women and men. And especially it was used like in the higher classes when they had affairs with different lovers and things like this. And I was tying that also, like you were talking about those themes of like prostitution, but maybe not so much like that, but secret affairs, like depending on how you closed it or how you held it. And they used to go, you know, like to the bulls, and they were sitting in different stratus, and they used the fan as a, you know, secret language kind of thing.
Well, there's that's interesting. Well, it's yeah, when we talk about prostitution, it is, found a lot of like open sexuality, open relationships with this, a lot of marital problems with this position. And so yeah, there is that sort of secret life and underground sort of life. And I think it is something that in some cases does make these people very vulnerable. So it sort of gets used against them in certain cases as well, these secret lives. We see, who was it, like someone like Herbert Hoover, the guy who founded the current FBI, you know, all the Snoop. He was the original, that's what they sort of called him back in the day, the original Snoop, and sort of digging into everybody's secret business as well. So I guess we're into, so I was just scrolling away. So the back, the thighs, the back of the trunk, of course, the thighs, that's very, very close to the sexual organs and very much related with sex. Strong blood pressure. A lot of STDs as well here. The thighs and the hips. I saw this APAS. This is actually an acronym for an autoimmune disease. And so we do see some different autoimmune diseases as well in this position. It almost seems to be a little bit like, well, there's going to be a lot of the hormonal stuff going on here, of course, especially the hormones for reproduction and sexuality and reproduction and that sort of stuff. But then we also get these autoimmune disorders that occur. And a lot of times that's kind of, anyways, the fat in the blood as well, it's connected with. APAS occurs when the body makes antibodies that mistakenly attack phospholipids. It's a type that's found, a fat that's found in the blood. This then causes blood clots to form in the veins and arteries and lead to numerous problems and complications. 70% affects women. Oddly enough, people with APAS are typically advised to avoid many of the foods for healthy life. No avocados, no garzombo beans, no vitamin K rich foods, no leafy greens, no broccoli, no vegetables, no sprouts. These are all the things we need for healthy life. And these sort of people are often advised to avoid all of that. The Lyre of Orpheus was made by Hermes from the tortoise shell. And so we'll see a lot of music in here actually also. This is the first lyre, almost like a guitar we see on the Flintstones, the tortoise shell and the stone, the stick, I guess. He used to charm Hades. Again, that's that sense of charming. Charmed his way through hell, in a sense, is what he did. It's a bit of a parable about how independent one a man who will trust that she will follow him. She doesn't want him watching her. Any sign that he has lost faith will be enough to make her go away, to become a celibate, but continue travel around playing the mist. And so this is interesting. It's that independent woman. That trust is very important here. Maybe that's that Venusian thing side of it. And so what a lot of these women want is they want that trust, the blind faith, you could say. They want that trust without being watched. And so as soon as their partners sort of lose that faith, and so as soon as they start to feel that jealousy or feel like they're losing their independence or they're being watched, then the relationship stops working. Of course, many of the women who wanted Mary Medusa's refusal to marry, bands of women tore them apart while they're intoxicated by Dionysus. That's also, there's a sort of sense there. One of the lessons of this, and I've learned this in my own life, is some women, they talk about how men sometimes, like incel sort of men, don't like being turned down by women. Well, there's a lot of women that really don't like being turned down by men. They really feel entitled that when they want to have sex with a man, they can have sex with a man. And oh my God, the thought that a man would ever turn her down almost makes her turn and want to tear him apart. And so you'll get some of that energy going on in here as well. Again, it's those really, what I think it is it relates to really sort of really messy breakups, basically, for both sexes. So they're often found in service products for women, working with and for women. A lot of women's stuff here. Women's rights also come into here. the right to sensual enjoyment, right to pleasures in life. Right sort of comes in through that Sagittarius sense of this. And so there is still a lot of rights here, but it's women's rights. It's more that fairness. I wonder if it isn't, we'll have a look here, if it isn't some of this sort of more fairness and fairness with regards to justice. So we'll watch that a little bit as we look at this. I was just watching, my mom loves watching these crime shows, or we're watching what is it? Geez, it completely slipped my mind. But anyways, there was the court case, and they were talking about that difference between fairness and justice just the other day. So that kind of highlighted here. So there's a lot of excess, a lot of drinking goes on here. That's that watery sort of nature of this nakshatra. The drinking, the serums, you could say, the drugs. But we'll also get on the healthy side of it. It becomes sort of the like the smoothies, the nice sort of cocktail elixir kind of drinks sort of come involved here. And we probably will see a lot of, like, nowadays in Canada, all the edibles are getting to be very popular, the edible cannabis kind of products. And so you'll probably see that coming involved with Purva Falguni as well, because it makes life beautiful, like a dream in a sense. It's very lovely. So beautiful life, exalted above and beyond moral and ethical life. They highly value the wealth, music, art, beauty, sensual pleasures. These are all sort of keys to life. They can be very self-destructive in the pleasure seeking. They'll usually have nice, pleasant, stylish, religious attire. Image counts a lot for them, and they'll be very careful with being a little bit pretentious, fake, putting too much stock in the image of things, sort of dress for success sort of thing, winning attitude. Really, what could you think? Like almost like women's empowerment comes in here to a certain degree. I want to say it is really women's empowerment on this one, not really so much for the men. There often are found in advisory positions of finance, art, designs. They have that specialty dealing with luxury products. I know some of the people that have this. One guy, he does construction, but he's a contractor building like luxury homes, 20-30 million dollar homes. Sometimes this guy's building, and he's just like a poor, simple contractor sort of guy. Dance, music, all of that stuff really comes involved here. They're balance seekers. They may work in global industries along the mix with different cultures, religions. That's really anything that's going on in Sagittarius is global in outlook. It's really broad, international, global, humanistic businesses, fine style presentations, a lot of doors, a lot of luck opens for them. Again, there's a lot focus on the surface details of things. We often talk about Sagittarius being the external expression of spirituality. And a lot of that really does come through this nakshatra. So, but having focused too much on the surface details, they might less substance or lose steam when it comes to actual showing what they're made of. There's still much to be said for the ability to inspire, can be very cooperative when we're working with others, and not likely to hold prejudice based on race, religion, or anything like that. They usually believe in fairness, equity. They can be compassionate, humanistic, generous. All of these things end up working with watery stuff. I talked about that watery products. Again, these are molten sort of liquidy things, not necessarily water. And a lot of them do seem to have a thickness to them. Almost anything that would have a fairly low melting point, you could say. And maybe these people also have a fairly low melting point. You poke a few of their buttons and boom, they get mad. So we can't gloss over any of the spiritual side of this nakshatra. Very lovely that way. Exquisite cathedrals, ancient temples. It's that beauty of the cathedral, you could say. Teresa Davila, the interior castle, the seductive side of Tantra, Buddhist mandala, and all those kind of morning artis, singing in the choir, any kind of bhakti, the right music for the morning drive, little things like this can make all the difference. So a little singing in the morning, right? Morning drive. They fall in following nature of is exposed in unique ways. Oh, here I'm talking about the plastic, 3D printing. Oh yeah, I just added that yesterday. Influence of the nakshatra. So we get that Venus rolled, we get that Venus Jupiter mix here. This is, if we think Sagittarius is the guru, this is the Venetian guru. This is Venus as the guru, right? He's also a guru. So he's also represented here. And that's kind of interesting if we look at that way. If we look at the guru in Sagittarius as the guru, then we find the first part is the Ketu, the letting go and release. We find the second part is the balance and the harmony and the beauty of Venus. And the very last smidgen is the truth of the sun. So interesting. And then Jupiter sort of holds them all in his space, I guess. So the Ascendant in Purva Falguni, I'm not going to read these sorts of things. We'll see how it, well, let's just have a look. Because the first part, lean, tall body is what Ben Bahati tells us. Teeth will be very beautiful, long ears, bright eyes, narrow waist, long arms, very attractive physical features. So we'll just go that far with that. And because this is the Ascendant, this is the body. That's going to be Jupiter. So you expect, or sorry, the Sagittarius side of this, you expect these people will be a little bit bigger. But the Venusian side, they'll take good care of themselves. They'll be quite lovely. So we see popes, a few. It's interesting that it's like one pope per pada. We could call Swami Vivekananda a pope as well. We see some major military generals here as well. General M. Walters was Marine Corps general. We see Tamerlane, really brutal, one of the greatest military generals of all time, but very, very brutal. Prince Harry of Wales is also, he's like search and rescue kind of stuff. I think that Purva Ashadha, how we see here, I'm not sure if you're going to see too many infantry guys in the military here, because this is the really nice, like, officer's uniform kind of thing going on here. Just as I say that, my eye catches on Derek Chauvin, and that was the cop who was who beat up the black guy and started all the Black Lives Matter stuff. And he was, I guess, an officer, training officer at the time. But it's that love for the pageantry to a certain degree here, for the ceremonial sort of side of things. Francis Ford Coppola, he's like a movie director, very good at pageantry. Sean Connery, another actor, quite good with pageantry. We'll see a lot of that, like masters of the arts sort of people, the actors, musicians. Novelist in Greek history, we see James Joyce. It's funny, James Joyce is like very high literature, lots of literature going on in this as well. It's that sort of, I think it's a little bit higher literature than what we find with the Purva Falguni. Willie Mays, Howie Mandel, I think that's some of their presenting. Chuck Norris, we find a few of these martial arts actors here. There was Chuck Norris, maybe a few anyways. These kind of guys, just really good entertainers in a lot of different ways. If you see any names and you want to open their charts, we'll have a look at that. Music composers, Johnny Legend, pianist, Purva Ashadha. I wonder, because Trent Reznor is also, he's classical trained, so he knows piano and all that sort of stuff too. Johnny Legend knows piano. I'm not sure Buddy Holly was a guitar player as well as I know. Sheryl Crow also on guitar. Here we go, another martial arts actor there, and Brandon Lee. Find some really legendary actors have this. These aren't, some of them aren't really normal actors, right? We look up here, Sean Connery, Paul Newman. These guys are just absolutely legendary people. James Watson, zoology. I wonder, we talked about the mold and things like that. I wonder if some of this James Watson, there's another guy, a big collector of natural history and things like that. We could talk about some of that natural history. That's what the fairies are sort of all about, is natural history in a certain degree. But we also find some of the people doing some taxidermy as well, filling up that mold of and that image of things. Um, these kinds of things come in. There's a couple Jyotishis here, but not so much. Yeah, a couple Jyotishis. Interesting. Dawn B, she's a science writer, but she also does taxidermy. This kind of stuff. So, anyways, we'll get past that because the ascendant we never know. Here's where it gets interesting when we get into the sun. We see Sri Rama Maharishi, Nostradamus, see a few big astrologers, not necessarily astrologers or astronomers. They're kind of more from back in those days, like Nostradamus. There was Newton, Isaac Newton, some cosmologists had this as well. Rama Maharishi, Paramahasa Yogananda, some really big gurus sort of have this. Beautiful robes. We got the Pope's got this, a little bit of royalty. We'll find more. General Walters still has this. Some physicians. Well, let's start with the first story. I'll jumping ahead. But we see a lot of sort of physicians, people working with biology have this. Again, working at that the microscopic level, even of the fluids. And we talked about all the critters and things that are living in the oceans. We can think of all the little critters that are living in our blood as well. All the different kinds of cells and antibodies and hormones and all those things that are kind of traveling through the bloodstream. I think that relates with all of this. So we see these microbiologists, chemists, of course, chemistry is working with all the reactions between two things. And that's what kind of sex is really dealing with as well, the way things sort of interact together. This is also, yeah, this is why I started getting confused with Purva Ashadha, because I saw some of these fusions going on here as well that we get with, or sorry, in Purva Falguni. We get like this rockabilly. We get Patti Smith was like she was known as like the poet laureate of punk, right? Sort of combining this poetry and punk, combining rock and this hillbilly music a little bit. Nice guitar players. We get John Denver as well, has this. Tiger Woods, I get a sense what I'm seeing here a little bit with some of these between the guitars and the golf and the baseball. There's some sense with the sun, maybe they are using some tools and use of tools somehow. Seeing a lot of these sort of long sticks being used here in different ways. We see a lot of secrets, right? Like Tiger Woods had all those sexual secrets coming out. Anthony Hopkins was infamous for that sort of thing. I don't know a lot about these people. I think someone like Patti Smith and the punk people, maybe they're just singing about secrets and stuff like that. Get drug dealers here. Maybe it's also some of the more like again the drinking and the drugs, that heat. The sun is really bringing a lot of heat to Purva Ashadha, bringing a lot of heat to the waters, same as Mars can do. It's going to really heat up that water to a certain degree.
I know I follow LeBron James a lot, and I've been following him for probably 20 years at this point.
You follow what?
LeBron James, basketball player.
Okay.
Yeah. And like he's known for like as soon as he became 18, like the pressure was on him to be the greatest basketball player of all time. And he hasn't slipped for 20 years. Like there's no cheating allegations, there's no drug use. Like he's just known as someone who works hard and always kind of does the right thing, helps charity. Like he's like the role model athlete, kind of like Tom Brady, except for the look towards Trump kind of thing. But LeBron James like just nailed it. There's nothing yet that's come up for him.
That's
So
interesting.
that might be an interesting chart to look at, maybe.
You used a really good word here, and this is something Sagittarius is known for, the role model. These are people you can follow. These are people you can get some direction from them. Like even someone like Patti Smith, she's a punk rocker. But wow, you hear so many punk and so many musicians talk about her as being and then I turned 13 and heard Patti Smith. Like you'll hear this all the time from musicians. Such a big influence that way. So there is that and that keeping that image up is very, very important for anyone with Purva Ashadha. And you talked about the pressure of it with sun there. And that's very much what might be really heavy pressure to keep up the image with this position. And this is difficult because at the end of the day, when you're keeping up image, you can only fall. You can only fail at the end of that. That's the only possible outcome. Because we all have secrets. We all have something hiding behind the hand fan. We all have something going on there. And so, and then there's people like Edgar Hoover, FBI, who's sticking their nose into all of this. And probably using those secrets to put pressure on people and things like that. These sorts of things come up. We see some more microbiology. Robert Hand, he's Vedic astrologer, actually. Wrote one of these early books that we have on Vedic astrology. We saw another astrologer, that Melody. Where was she? Anyways, another astrologer I had this placement.
Robert Hand is Western?
What's that?
You said Robert Hand?
I think he's Vedic astrology. I can't remember which
one. I've read his books and they seem to be Western astrology. They don't mention Vedic in a couple of books he's read.
Maybe I'm confused him with someone else.
He has one of my Bibles, which was Planets in Transit, as a book, and that's something that I used to refer to before I even knew of Vedic astrology. So he might be doing Vedic because he seems like the best, in my opinion.
Okay.
But yeah,
I'll have to look at him again because I thought I knew what book he had.
You might be right. I just don't know.
Yeah. Maybe he just wrote one about Vedic astrology that I happen to have got my hands on or something as well. So then you get someone like Rudyard Kipling as well with the Jungle Book. He's one of the sort of, for people who travel India, he's one of these sort of early gurus of India travel. He introduced us to all these lovely words like Balu and Mowgli, and the word for bear and the word for child, and all these lovely things. Henry Matisse with his Blue Nudes, Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson's an interesting one to see here. Passion of Christ sort of idea. Really bringing, was one of the things sort of bringing that I kind of thought with Purva Falguni comparison was a lot of these people are also, and this is maybe what the prostitution angle of this does, but it's bringing a couple different things together that don't seem to really belong together. It's like the Beauty and the Beast in a sense. It's like theater and spirituality in a sense, or art and spirituality. They do go together. They're not opposites, you could say. But that's where, like, when we think of the guru or when we think of spirituality, we think of Jupiter first. We don't necessarily think of Venus. It seems a little bit, well, it's unorthodox. That's what it is. So we get some of that. There's some addiction counselors here. I know a few of the people I know and can think of here. I don't know everybody's relationships, but at some point there has been a very brutal breakup, very brutal relationship things going on here. Have been really, really rough. Big scandals like Tiger Woods sort of had to a certain degree. Yeah, these sort of scandals used to have states Christian to Islam. This was the height of anti-terrorism in the US. And all of a sudden this American Christian preacher converted to Islam. And then every show on CNN sort of carried him. I was pretty sure, I looked at him as soon as I saw him. I was like, oh my God, you must have been planted by the CIA or something. Just a sort of a clown show in a lot of ways. And I did get a sense, in some sense, that a lot of these people are kind of in the middle of a circus somehow, sort of idea. There is kind of a bit of chaos going around them to a certain degree, I find, with this nakshatra, and they're sort of in the center of it. And it might not always be necessarily a bad thing, but that's sort of what we get a sense of some of the churches get like, right? Everybody's dressed in their costumes, these sort of elaborate costumes. Some are a little bit funny. They're just going through a bunch of rituals that are sort of disassociated from any inner meaning. We can't really see it that way, and it seems like a circus to a certain degree. And so you
But
get
the
you get a
the
lot of
sports world in the US, LeBron and Tiger Woods, like this, that's kind of circus as well. Hollywood.
exactly. There's a whole thing going on around these guys, and yeah, they don't really have anything to do with it. And I did find that there was some of these people had allegations, and some of them had multiple allegations, but nothing was ever found. And even when you read about it, they really sort of say like it was just almost a big circus for nothing to a certain degree. Um, and that's sort of how we feel about sex. That's sort of our response to sex. Like, look how sex is sort of seen in society. It's a gong show. It's crazy. It's just wild the way people like, and the way we go when we get sex. Again, like the old man invigorated by the young, beautiful prostitute or whatever sort of idea. We all go a little bit crazy here. So there's that side of things. And we see these sorts of things go on. You want to look at any of these people's charts? Any of these big gurus or anybody? Let's actually I'm gonna use Emmett for a minute because I don't know anything about James LeBron.
I know everything.
Oh, we got our expert. Oh,
And it's LeBron James, not
he's in
James
the
LeBron.
sun period now then. Just started a couple years ago. So how's things changed for him a couple years ago? He's the big boss leader now. It fits in his, oh wait, this didn't send him. There we go.
He would have joined the Los Angeles Lakers.
I
So
knew-
he became that center spotlight when he joined the Lakers. Before that, he was just in Cleveland. So
A
when
lot of
he,
pressure for really big contracts going on in Sun period.
yep, especially like outside of basketball, I'd say like movie contracts and trying to get his life outside of basketball kind of going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full spotlight will be on his relationships in this period, I imagine.
Yeah, it's all about how other superstars relate with him, kind
Yeah.
of thing, and how they work with him. Yes, he's not the main spotlight. It's all about who he's able to attract and play with.
Yeah, okay. And
Mhm.
it is for him, all that's going on in the seventh house. So his whole world revolves around the other. Whole world revolves around fulfilling those contracts. He's very open about them, so he even does probably a little more than he has to make sure those contracts are fulfilled. It's interesting. It's a team contract here, and Sun rules the third house going into the seventh house. And so also connecting with the team, huge amount of pressure, I'm sure, is there.
Yeah, he's with the Los Angeles Lakers. They're them and the New York are the two highest pressure teams that they need to, like, if you're going to play there, like the fans are going to attack you if you don't do it properly, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we look at from the moon chart, and it's in his 10th house, and so there's that all that leadership quality there, and really has to lead the team. But lead the charge. It's kind of here from this perspective, it's like a war. The sun is ruling the sixth house and going into the 10th. And so it's kind of this is a tricky position. It's the sixth lord, but it's also the ninth from the 10th. And so it's not a horrible position, but still there's going to be some disputes probably with his bosses, with authority and things like that coming out.
So yeah, so he's gotten in fights with the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers many times about how to manage the team, and then it was kind of like a mutual agreement when he went to Miami. But yeah, he's been known to fight off and be a trouble to owners because he kind of takes over.
Okay, so and well, what he also really has going on here as well with the sun and Jupiter, and all I've ever heard about him is he's very self-righteous. And so you get that there, get that through the Sun Jupiter combination. But somehow it's not necessarily him. It's some partnerships or something that he has as well, that sort of drives all of that side of him, you could say, and his sense of leadership. And so again, it's that image on the outside that sort of comes out and says things, gets even political and things like that. But when you look inside, he's one of those sports people that doesn't actually know what's going on, probably. Plastic, he's been shaped and molded, really. Like a lot of these people, molded by the pressure, molded by the heat.
Yeah, as soon as he was 15, 16, they started molding him, and he's the ultimate product of, like, the NBA is LeBron James. LeBron James is the NBA. Obviously, that's transitioning now, but that's kind of what happened with him, is he became the Wayne Gretzky, the Tom Brady from
Yeah,
day one. From day one, like, they didn't even, before he was even in the league, he was already up for that position, and they were molding him since then.
yeah. So there is a Tiger Woods had something quite similar going on for him that way. Um, yeah, so there is that sort of molding and shaping people in that way as sort of comes through. And with the sun, it's like shaped by, like, the father can be a lot of giving a lot of that pressure on these people, I'm sure, early in life, and then authority figures and things like that, and just the pressure of the sun, the heat to perform, the sense of, I think becomes a sense of perfectionism. That's what the sun always wants. But in this nakshatra, it's sort of that, again, molding yourself to perfection. Um, I know it's funny we don't see too many women with this. Um, they're there, um, but there's very few. And some of them I know did really have a lot of pressure from spouses as well to be perfect, to be that perfect wife, to be that perfect woman in a sense. Um, that's what I'd noticed with this second pada. The two women that have this, and all these, Zora's a boy also, and Pasha, those are all boys down there. Greta Thunberg and Catherine of Oregon. These are two of the most controversial women in history. Catherine of Oregon, well, at least for her, no fault of her own, King Henry VIII wanted a divorce and caused a schism in the church. I was in the Protestant church, and so Anglican and Protestant sort of caused that schism. So very controversial. And then Greta Thunberg, who's this little activist who just screams, makes all kinds of controversy, loved and hated, but bringing a lot of controversy in. Same with this Yusuf Estates, right? With his conversion, lots of controversy sort of involving. It seems especially the second pada, which is related with Virgo. Right, so a lot going on in that second pada with the controversial sort of stuff. The first pada being Leo, and so maybe that's that extra pressure from the sun and that extra heat for celebrity, that celebrity pressure coming on to some of these folks. And you can see that in some of them. Fifth Business had a little bit of that going on in it as well. Great novel. That's from Roberts and Davies. I think he's got Purva Ashadha placements as well. But if you ever want to read novels, I recommend Fifth Business. The reason I should mention why I've got a novel in here. The whole novel starts with a date and a time of this kid throwing a snowball at another kid. And it's an exact date and time is there. And so I just made it for fun, but I find a lot of the themes of the novel play through with the Purva Ashadha. One of the main characters had a big thing for angels, actually. Not quite fairies, but you can see the connection, angels and fairies. We should keep our eye open for angels in here as well through that. And so it's funny, through literature, you get these anyways. I like to have fun too. So it's like I've got Jesus's chart, right? Like, how can you have to make it. And then fight with it to try to figure out which was his real birth time. So anyway, so we get some of that going on, those controversies in the second pada. In the third pada, we're getting more of the looking for the balance. Like these two books, aside from the Bible, these are a couple of the most widely read literary achievements we have. And we think of the West goes, we get someone like Alan Watts, bringing that Eastern philosophy in as well. John Peterson's interesting, physics and meteorology, but he actually moved to India, I don't know, 100 years ago, less than that, 50 years ago or something. So he was a white dude that moved to India to teach physics and do weather there, study the weather. We saw Braille, the blind educator, the guy who invented Braille and that sense of touch. Sort of goes to talk about the sensitivity, maybe as well, of this nakshatra. That's Braille is the little bumps that the blind people used to read. Where else? We get these actors. I put them, but it's like I don't know any of them. Nicolas Cage, though, as far as I know about him, he's the big tough actor, but he's kind of a fairy. Like a little bit, he's a little bit soft. Big tough guy on the outside, that strong image, but he's said to be very, very soft. You can poke him like nothing. Blind track and field. So we get a bit of blindness going on in this third pada. Bonnie Franklin, nightclub singer. Chantel also, she does yoga and design, but she's kind of a bar, a lounge singer as well. I noticed once I got to this fourth pada, it's like the physics and math sort of stuff really jumped out. Person-centered psychotherapy as well. Some LGBTQ rights, Simone de Beauvoir. She was married to Jean-Paul Sartre, but they had an open relationship. They were married. They didn't even live together actually, but they saw each other almost every day. And so, yeah, they had this like very avant-garde sort of relationship sort of thing going on there. It's funny. I look at some of these people. There's a bit of mix as well between medicine, science, quite a few scientists with this placement of the sun. We should open at least someone's chart here. What do we want to look at? Oh yeah, we already looked at James LeBron. Why don't we look at Yogananda, put him for fun. Autobiography of a yogi. It's interesting. You talked about just occurred to me. You talked about the secret language of the hand fan. Now that might be something too we see here is a little bit of knowledge of language and linguistics. This just came to me because of Lord of the Rings, Tolkien. He made up his whole language as well. The Braille, the guy doing Braille, also making up his own secret languages there as well. So there definitely does seem to be some secret language going on with this nakshatra in this sort of position. Yeah, thanks. That's why I love going over this stuff with you guys. So we're looking at Brahmansa. No, I don't think they have. Yes, this was a C rating given by his ashram. And I wasn't very happy with this. Well, yeah, for a while I was, and I ended up coming back to it because of the Maga Ascendant. And he was very much one who would leave his body and go into trance and these kinds of things. And so I ended up leaving it, but he's got Moon and Maga. So it's a tough call with this. I think this is what I wanted to turn it to. Scorpio. But anyways, let's just look at him for Moon here anyways. We don't have time to rectify charts now. So he's got the Moon, and so this puts his sun in his in the fifth house. And so this must have been a lot of pressure to perform when he was on stage and to get his performance just right. And he did very inspiring, invigorating sort of performances that he did with yoga and through his trance, and of course everybody said he had to be in trance because he did such powerful sort of asanas and different things like this. And there was a lot of vim and vigor, most certainly in Yogananda. And that's sort of, I guess he was himself almost like an elixir. Uh, but he was very sort of feminine in his approach, in some ways. I'm trying to think, did he ever have any sort of scandals? I don't think Yogananda ever had any scandals, did he? He was sort of the ultimate guru. And so you have that. But of course, a lot of people, he got a lot of criticism for his book. Of course, folks like us read his book and we think, wow, magic and mystery and all of that thing, sort of miracles being performed, you could say, and we really love it. But he also had a lot of criticism for this, as it just being a sort of literary, what can you say, literary expression. And there is a lot of literary expression in Purva Ashadha, especially with the sun here. Like Tolkien, another one is sort of Tolkien was also sort of like this great priest, a grand priest of the university in a sense, back when these professors could go around like that. Not like our modern professors, just wearing their blue jeans to work kind of idea. Alan Watts is interesting. He's very famous for bringing Eastern philosophy also to the West. There is always sort of a very strong East meets West kind of themes in here as we're going along. There's really, but Alan Watts didn't consider himself a philosopher. He considered himself a philosophy entertainer, which is subtle difference, but that's his words, not mine. He's still considered a great philosopher by most of us. Just blew our minds, really, is what he did. He was also, geez, he was like married 7 times, I think. So there's another one with a lot of sort of marriages and relationships going on and troubled partnerships. So let's skip along. Let's just scroll through this quick. We got a lot in the Ascendant. We got a lot of the Pope figures. Because part of what the sun does in Sagittarius is a person is entitled to preach. And so we do get, I think, we get a little bit of this wokeness that goes in here, a little bit of and some people, it can be a little bit of like the Greta Thunberg, what we call the Karen, the person who's entitled to come and tell you how to live your life, you know? There's that sort of thing going on here. They're entitled, they can kind of do what they want. So there's some hypocrisy sometimes in here as well. So kind of entitled, and especially when it's in the Ascendant, because these are sort of entitled people, very much so. And we do see Greta Thunberg with it there. Yeah, I don't know so much about some of these popes and things like this. Anthony Hopkins played some big roles with some powerful monologues, but I don't know much about him. Robert Duvall, also sort of legendary in their ways. I kind of wonder, so now we've got this in the second house, we see someone like Louis Braille, and so we think that maybe he's connecting with language and the secret languages somehow. It's hard to say. Powerful voice here. We get 2 quite powerful singers with Patti Smith and Elvis Presley. Powerful voice of authority, you could sort of say, going on here. This is the 10th Lord coming up here. And so they're going to be speakers, teachers, kind of people, like someone even like Kyle Rittenhouse, probably going around doing speaking tours and things to all the conservative places, making good money. He's being molded and shaped into the next, God knows what, right? Into the next Alan Watts or whatever. Hunter Schafer, the next sort of like
Shooting
that.
ranges.
Pardon me?
So it's Mike who's frozen, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just at his place, and yeah, the upload there is terrible.
You guys are, oh, there you guys are moving again. Okay. I could hear you, you just weren't moving. And I don't think you could hear me. I'm sitting
No,
literally,
you were non-existing.
yeah, I'm sitting right beside the modem here. But anyway, so someone like Kyle
Yeah.
Rittenhouse being molded and shaped into something. Elvis Presley also, he was the king of America, right? So he was shaped into being a kind of Captain America figure. Kyle Rittenhouse may even be sort of similar that way. Yeah, we see these very open relationships. Simone de Beauvoir, Hunter Schafer, Michael C. He's never had a girlfriend. He's only had prostitutes in his life. Ashan Goa, the drug dealer, also, he's never had a girlfriend in his life. He's just had a lot of one night stands sort of things, that kind of stuff. So it's tough on relationships, this position. And it's interesting. It's like kind of like, what does the second house have to do with relationships? Uh, but maybe it's that image is just too harsh. The show is the show must go on, I guess. Maybe it just doesn't get that connection. So oh, sorry, I'm editing. So then we get here, we get in the fourth house. These are kind of can be very local leaders. These are powerful people in the local place, or preachers, local preacher kind of people. Like Sri Rama Maharishi, Andrew Johnson, he was a leader. Catherine of Oregon, we see her again there as well. This is, what do we got here? This is how was it the 12th? That was the 10th. Oh no, that was the 11th. I skipped one. That's what happened. So yeah, I'll just go through the one in the third house. All these scientists have it: Stephen Hawking, Nostradamus, Isaac Newton, Louis Pasteur, very powerful scientist sort of people. We get to this fourth house, and we see that, like, Catherine of Oregon's house still stands, for example. It's a large cathedral. Sri Rama Maharishi, you can still go to his house. Their house is like a cathedral, basically. The big tall spire on the sun on top. You've got to go there and look out. It's beautiful homes, gorgeous sort of places like that. Temples in a lot of ways. Here we get, oh, actually, that's how the scientists come into play, is it? No. I'm just thinking of that cathedral theme and thinking like all of these people were kind of living at the university, or maybe just next to the university. Anyways, or next to the church sort of idea. I don't know, it's hard to say. So anyways, Alan Watts, Kipling. Let's just skip ahead to the moon. The spirit must be felt so intensely that it has the power to call others in passing, for it must pass, not stop in pictures. And so this is that flowing, that sense of flowing nature. The spirit must be felt so intensely that it has a power to call others in passing. So this is that sort of like divine inspiration, in a sense. And there is a lot, that invigoration. And so, but what Emily Carr is kind of saying here is that spiritual intensity is something that rises up and then fades. It's like a wave that comes, it crests and it fades like that. And it's not something that stops. You can't stop it. It's always flowing. You have to let it flow. And so we see a lot of spiritual music, spiritual art, very beautiful life these people have. Moon is the culture that they grew up in. This is the culture, their comfort zone, the sort of atmosphere they're comfortable in is this Purva Ashadha. And so it's a lot of like kind of spa life. It's this beautiful, beautiful temples, beautiful, like almost universities, centers of higher learning, arts, theater, all of that sort of thing coming involved, nice food. Where do we go here? Down here. That broad mind, that openness is also here. We can even sort of start a sense of open borders that we see also going on. More liberal arts kind of education happening in here. Anyways, very nice sort of luxuries and comforts and all of that sort of coming together. A touch of the mystics, since they truly recognize the validity of philosophical entitlements. Creative performance often means um, their creative performances often means expressing some higher meaning. And we talked about that literary sense, the high literature sort of going on in here. Always peaceful, like the beautiful, luxurious palaces. And tranquility, soothed by sparkling luxury, the comforts they want. Here, lots of opportunity for self-depreciation or delusion, addiction to pleasures may become completely absorbed in religion, satisfaction, the beauty of the gods, a sensual indulgence. They can be very convincing, but the truth can be deceptive as they seek to balance their belief with optics. Early victories may be seen as proof for one's own righteousness. And that's also it about some of that early victory stuff. Addiction to their own self-righteous satisfaction and ideological dogmatism can cause them to deny the humanity in others. They tend to follow through with their vows or promises while maintaining loyalty and fundamental principles. Once they've made a commitment, they'll follow through regardless of obstacles. They can tend to justify any means, can be attracted to exploitive situations that turn out to be quite profitable, finding the beauty in life through philosophy and religion, these kinds of things. There's a sense when we think of water, water is kind of, if you push on, if you're gentle to water, you push on it gently. If you put your hand like this, like a knife, and go through it, water can be very gentle. If you jump off a diving board and land belly first, slap that water, it's like cement almost. It's like stone. It's very hard. Same sense of like a wave coming and crashing in. It's just water, man. Like, what's the problem? But the weight of it, the heaviness of it. We saw that weight and the heaviness in Mula, the most dense, and we're still very heavy and very dense with water and liquid form. And so there's still a density going on here. So the moon also is the mother, and so the mother's often religious or very ideological or these sorts of things. And the mother may use, this was an interesting note, I remember reading this, the mother may use the Preether orthodoxy to guide her parental decisions. Remember when I read this, I had a client who was doing this, coming to me to figure out how to raise her child. And so that kind of thing, fear and aggressive threat, being held back, bondage and debt. There is a bit of bondage and debt as well in this nakshatra. So we see again a lot of popes. They're really comfortable with the pageantry. Eugene Hegro went to Japan, and he was one of these guys that brought Zen to the West early on. John Smeaton, this is one of those guys who was working with the cast iron. He's got Saturn moon conjunct. We see more architects, interior designers. Oh, that's a big thing here too, that interior design, the beauty, the form and function, really sort of coming together here in a lot of ways through the architects. We do find Thomas Beattie, the pregnant man, probably taking a lot of hormone therapies and stuff like this. Terry Fox is interesting. We find here an amputee runner. This was, I think it was in the 80s. He ran across Canada to raise money for war amps, I think is what it was. Patsy Cline, folk singers, botanists. No doubt Patsy Cline and someone like Evelyn Mary Booth, no doubt that they believed in fairies. They were probably giving worship to fairies. I'm sure they were. Even someone like Terry Fox, when you go through the mountains, it's one of the stops you have to make when you drive through the Canadian mountains. It's like a must-see place. It's the Terry Fox Park kind of thing. And this is one of the ones, like any tourist, you have to stop there. It's got a nice wide open place. It's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful, right on the Athabasca River is the Fraser through there. Anyways, it's a really gorgeous spot in the middle of the Rocky Mountains here. And that's like the Terry Fox Park or something, rest stop or something. And so there is that, that's actually really, that rest stop as maybe a good thing for these Purva Ashadha. That's almost kind of what the prostitute or what the feminine energy does in a certain way as well, as it's that place where you can let go to a certain degree. It's the rest stop. It's that place where you can go and you can relax, and it's very lovely and pretty and beautiful and peaceful, right? And you can let your guards down. Um, so you get a bit of that going on. There might be a bit like we think of all that wateriness, bars, pubs, these kind of places are also kind of rest spots. And you go there for a bit of entertainment, maybe of Purva Shad. You go there to kind of meet with people and bring minds together. Maybe the salons of the old days as well might have had Purva Shad energy, these kinds of things. It's interesting. We get to that second pada again of Virgo. We get someone like Harvey Weinstein. That's kind of the service he was providing the young women, in a sense, that place where you could go and relax and let your guard down. Was that Harvey Weinstein? No, he was collecting. It was Epstein was providing the place, but Harvey Weinstein was really sort of doing that as well. We get that imbalance of Virgo, I think, comes in more in this second pada. It's interesting to see my mother has this, and she was a forensic psych nurse dealing with a lot of sex assaults and sex crimes as well. We saw there. Al Gore, not so much, but you could say he's also dealing with the raping of Mother Earth, if we want to call her that, and use it in that perspective, that environmentalism to a certain degree. So we see a lot of like some military leaders, Ozzy Osbourne. We see that fierceness almost coming out a little bit. Ernest Hemingway, he was a journalist and author, but he was also like following the wars in Spain and things like this. Richard Pryor, there's one of those blind singers. Emily Carr, I think she was almost blind by the end of her life, but she was, you want to talk about worship of nature spirits and forest deities. You check out some of Emily Carr's art. Amazing, beautiful artist, a lot like Group of Seven sort of stuff, but beautiful. Their vision of the trees and the forest and the nature, and oh, really lovely. Yeah, I just figured out a chart I did yesterday. They were growing a forest, and I was wondering, well, where's the tree farm? Purva Ashadha. So there is maybe a bit of tree farming going on in Purva Ashadha. They really seem to like that sort of stuff. And I wonder if I get a sense with some of that, with like, say, some of John Smeaton's engineering as well. Interesting. So I think of this we think about that blindness, right? And we think of being in the forest. And we look at some of Emily Carr's works and how the trees sort of like close off the view a little bit like a hand fan as well. Looking at someone like John Smeaton was making these massive bridges and things like this with all the cast iron. And you go under a bridge and you look at all those crossings of cast iron, and there's all that sort of crossings. And like the hand fan providing some secrecy, some privacy, closing of the doors in a sense, to a certain degree. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I see a bit of those kind of themes going through here as well. So then we get up to the seventh, and it almost seems to move away a little bit from the sex crimes, but we still get someone like Osho, still very sex and the super conscious, if you don't know his book about that. You get someone like Johnny Depp, went through all kinds of allegations in that regard. Lee Harvey Oswald, that's the guy that shot Kennedy. They did call him a fall guy a little bit. Then we get George Washington, Hunter Biden, Sheldon Anderson. So we're getting up into this, what is this, Scorpio, getting into the secrets a lot more, the hidden sort of things. See someone like Sheldon Anderson, the casino resort, that sort of lifestyle seems to come in involved a little bit more in this fourth pada. Willie Mays, these big baseball players, Sachin Tendulkar. I'm pretty sure he was a cricket guy. Bear Gillis, Kyle Rittenhouse. So it's almost a little bit more of the. Yeah, we got some sex crimes going on here with Robert Brule. As we still get, it's interesting, Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta Thunberg, they both have sun and moon in Purva Ashadha. So they both have the dark moon. That's kind of interesting. In Purva Ashadha, Sarah McLachlan, she really, and Cher, they really almost idealized the moon in Purva Ashadha, that sort of secret sexuality or sensuality of this. And Sarah McLachlan, she had that beautiful voice, right? She was just singing about ice cream, but what some ice cream is better than others, I guess. But she just had such a lovely voice, and such a lovely sort of like femininity to her, right? She's almost like the perfect women in a lot of ways. And there is some of that. Can really see how Cher almost does seem like she was molded into the perfect woman. I wonder if there isn't some of that. Yeah, we see some transgender here as well. And probably some, anyways, the mother molding them from a young age somehow, or these kinds of things. Anyways, but when you get up to this eighth, I wonder if, no, that's the moon. Anyways, it makes me want to sort of check someone like Harvey Weinstein's chart. Just open that up again quickly. So if I have the wrong birth time, he could end up being in the fourth pada, but get sort of sex crimes there. But this one, I would think a lot of sexuality and sensuality here as well in the eighth. And what was it? It was the seventh. This was the Pushkara pada was the third pada, I believe, in this Libra. And so here we get not very many people with the third pada, just a little handful of them. And it's interesting. The couple I know
You
are.
have it split on 2 pages, huh, Mike?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, okay.
Like, show Sarah Jessica Parker,
I know it shows up there. Okay, as well. Okay. Curtis Jones,
Ujo.
he had sex abuse in his hockey camps when he was young as well. I know some of the people I know, they were, it almost does seem like some of them were kind of molded into relationship and that sort of thing.
I'm looking at Johnny
Sarah,
Depp.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dana.
Sarah Jessica Parker, she's the one from Sex and the City.
Oh,
So
yeah.
maybe not in her life, but the character she plays is obsessed with like relationships, and she's in the Libra Navamsha, right? So
Yeah.
sex and Libra.
Yeah, okay. So that's all that relationship stuff going on there. Aishwarya Rai Bachchan, she's like a princess. She's married to one of Amitabh Bachchan, the big movie actor in India. So yeah, you do see some of that molded from a young age, I think, to be who they are, to certain degrees. And you do see a lot of sex abuse, and there's quite a few. I've got quite a few sort of transgenders in here, and so it's almost like they're shaping and molding their own body as well. That sort of thing. I wonder if we don't, when we get into some of the other, like Mars, for example, if it's not going to get into more like bodybuilding, using that sort of heat to mold the body and shape things. So, yeah, there's Emily Carr. Yeah, very spooky woman in that picture. I don't know if you can quite see her. And that's her painting in the background. See all the big swirls in there. Amazing. She's beautiful art. I love her art. If you go to the west coast of Canada, there's like Emily Carr School of Fine Arts, and she's quite popular over there. West coast of Canada is full of witches. All these people worshiping fairies and nature spirits, and all of that is like total west coast of Canada. And it is really like, I remember going up, you go up to Tofino where I was living. Honest to God, it's like a bunch of little forest nymphs there. It's this little village, and you see some of the most beautiful women. There's hardly anyone there, but it's some of the most beautiful women in the world. They're all in Tofino, and they're all like wearing these beautiful gowns, and there's like 3 fine dining restaurants, and so like this kind of stuff. And it's just a village. There's nothing there but forest and these just beautiful people. I don't want to see just the women, even the men are beautiful men. They're all surfers and they're all like, oh, they're just gorgeous. Anyways, so a lot of Purva Ashadha energy going on the west coast of Canada is what I'm trying to say. And so Emily Carr really just epitomizes that that sort of thing. But we get this moon. What happened? Sorry, I pushed the wrong button somewhere. Suddenly we were in sweaty. So yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is some singers, some poets, some storytellers coming on here. Again, speakers. We get but again, I don't think Purva Ashad people aren't going to be the most likely people to tell the truth. Truth is flexible, right? With them, it's kind of, and so you get people like where was he? I just saw Hunter Biden. He's never going to tell the truth. There's at least a transgender here as well, which is also kind of lying to a certain degree. And she, whatever he is, he does lie incessantly as well. And there's that poetic license, is what they would say, right? And so there you'll see a lot of that. And this is the second house, so that's coming in right into their speech, that sort of poetic license with what really happened. But good poets, good songwriters, good storytellers, all of that sort of thing. Excellent with that. We get in the third house now, we're going to see it more with the groups of people. And so I wonder if it's someone like Harvey Weinstein, if it's not sort of these groups of beautiful young nubile women to a certain degree. Ozzy Osbourne was maybe pulling that sort of thing. You wouldn't think that with Emily Carr, but that's basically what all her students are. As he's at least at you go to the Emily Carr University, or you see the people that are really following her work. These are the little sort of like what I want to call the little fairies and witches and nymphs and sort of things that we have on the West Coast. Little hippie girls and things like that, right? Little forest people. So we get these kinds of things going on there. What is it ruling? The 10th house. And so that's connected with their work and their job, as well as working with the groups of these sorts of folks. It's funny, something like the Treaty of Lancaster, I can't remember the exact details, but that treaty was basically just a treaty so they could stab a knife in somebody's back. It wasn't a real treaty at all. Can't remember the details, but there's that. So there is that sense of, where could we say, like Harvey Weinstein, anyways, taking advantage where they could to a certain degree and using that defenselessness to their own advantages to a certain degree. That's sort of what the treaty was all about. And we get this in the fourth home. Here we found that John Smeaton with it. You're going to expect the home is going to have to be watery, right? It really does. It has to be close to the watery, very sort of watery in nature. The home might be like the hard shell, very protective, defensive sort of thing. We get some scientists have this moon here as well. The rhythm and comforts of education and schooling, and it's higher school, higher sort of education also going on here. And there's usually that spirituality in the home and the sort of all the celebrations and ceremonies taking place in the home, really related with the spiritual paths, I would expect with this. but you're also going to get these very beautiful, like it's going to be a very beautiful, lovely home, full of art, full of wonder, nature, probably out in nature somewhere, if not by the water. And they're going to be a little bit, you're going to expect with this too, maybe their mothers were quite sensual and sort of seductive figures. And so they're kind of close, a lot of closeness with the mother figures, you would think here as well. Yeah, and gain through land, canals, roadways also come involved with this to a certain degree. And so gain through real estate and all of that because of 11th owner. Where are we? 10, 11. Let's just skip ahead. Let's go to Mars here. So am I missing something? Where's Emmett? Oh, we missed your son in Purva Ashadha, Emmett.
What do you mean missed?
Yeah, so that's giving you a lot of pressure at work to perform that, son. Mold and
Yeah, like I can't get away with anything ever.
yeah, okay. So yeah, that's and Saturn, you've got Saturn and Sun too, so it really feels like you can never do anything perfect either. Never get away with anything. All your flaws are kind of pointed out there. And making you anyways kind of hide to a certain degree that way.
I have to be that role model
Okay.
essentially as well. Like at work, like I'm always the guy like, oh, like Emmett does everything right, but really I just look like I do.
Okay, yeah. That's you're probably being saved by the Jupiter aspect, but that is sort of a harsh sense of needing to make perfection and sort of not sort of being aware of any imperfections, you could say. And so it's those imperfections you don't even see the perfection. You only see the mistake in a sense with that Saturn. Like that. And then if we look from the moon chart, then that's all coming up into the 12th house. And so due to all of that, such a loss of emotional exhaustion going up there, and then just wanting to get away and go away and close the door and sort of almost hide from all that imperfection in a sense, or shame, basically. I'm not perfect, and so I'll just go away, sort of idea. So any other insight for us?
Yeah, that is something that somewhat happened. Now it's kind of been restructuring my life in a way that I don't look for perfection anymore. I look for just self-expression is the perfection. So really just me participating and being myself. So that's how I kind of deal with it now. So I've had to retrain my brain and relook at how I see things to having like, okay, like you participating is the goal, not you nailing it. Because like I've gone through that period of nailing it all the time and being perfect, and it doesn't change anything. Whether you're failing all the time or nailing it all the time, you still feel the same at the end of the day if you're not self-expressing. So now it's been more about my own self-expression and my own perspective rather than trying to achieve these unrealistic settings that are there. So that's yes, and Jupiter helps me get lucky around that too with that about
Yeah. And then well, you just had a Jupiter Sun period just recently as well. So that must have was there did you have some connection with the water in the Jupiter Sun period?
I was actually at the Jyotish retreat at the Ganga in Rishikesh during that when it started. So
Okay.
I would say I connected with the Ganga for the first time, physically, literally. And then yeah, coming into Jyotish and actually touching base with the Indian roots and the Vedic astrology roots, I guess, would have been something that happened in the period to help point me into like, hey, you need to do astrology kind of thing.
Yeah, getting away to kind of affect yourself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, I also saw the Dalai Lama in that period, so that was a pretty sick experience just to be able to witness him and feel him. So
Sorry, I'm just queuing up Dana's hair quick too. Yeah, it's let's see something back here again. Okay. Just looking for Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama is interesting because he's also sort of a figurehead who was molded and shaped for his position, right? He was molded by the CIA. Modern Buddhism that's come out of the Dalai Lama was also basically made by the CIA. It's not really, it's sort of a deviation from original tenets in a lot of ways. Um, and then they did bring in also the Vajrayana Buddhism, which is the sort of sexual Buddhism, and that's sort of the tantra that was first brought into the West, at least to North America, was this Vajrayana Buddhist tantra, and so they have a hard time. Like the Shiva tantra doesn't really talk too much about sex. It does talk about sort of breaking taboos, but it doesn't really get into specific like rituals with sexual rituals and that sort of thing. But the Vajrayana of Dalai Lama, and I think he has a placement in Purva Ashadha actually. No, Uttara Ashadha. Okay. So, but anyways, nonetheless, he was sort of molded to be what he became. Um, so now
very molded. Every Dalai Lama really gets molded, right? So I'd be curious how all of them have links to that.
yeah, the whole thing is actually they go find them when they're young children, and yeah, they mold them into being the Dalai Lama. If you go to Nepal, there's always in Kathmandu, there's like the I can't remember what she's the reincarnation of, but reincarnation of some goddess. And again, it's just some like little kid they find to play this role, and they really mold them and shape them into to taking on those roles. Someone like Jiddu Krishnamurti, I'm sure he has placements here. Mula, no. Anyways, I'll stop making things up and stick to my script. Um, apparently it's not working out too well for me, my theories. Well, that's what you make a theory and you think, oh well, this person was molded, they must have it. That person was molded, they must have it. So anyways, we've got to reconsider at least a little bit, but I'm still going with it. I'm not giving up on the molded theory. Uh so the mark
As a Purva Ashadha son, I feel like I was very molded. That's something that I've used for the last 12 years in my therapy session. That I feel my parents molded me to be into who I am and not actually let me be who I am.
interesting.
And part of the whole process of what I'm going through is I broke down everything my parents built me for who I am, wrecked that apart, and now I'm remolding myself into who I am. And astrology has been one of the really helpful tools to help me remold into who I am, who I want to be. And self-actualization is a big theme in my chart. So I feel it plays the storyline like the next part of my life is going to be way different than the last. The first, what just went by.
There, that's such a strong theme in Purva Ashadha, probably both Ashads. The early life and the second half of life being very different. There's a point, and I don't want to make this sound like it's purely religious, but there's a point in their lives where they're kind of born again with this nakshatra. That's sort of what Venus does. He regenerates, rebirth comes through Venus. And so there is a kind of point in their life when yeah,
I've changed my name too, so that would have been the point of rebirth. I used to be known as someone else, and now I go by Emmett.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's rebirthing.
And this was right after a concussion, about 2 weeks after a concussion, or the concussion was like the wake up blow kind of thing.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting.
And I don't like, just to add more fire to the fuel here to give you the interpretation, and whatever, I don't care. But I also I gave myself that concussion, like I slammed my own head essentially. So I mean the period I was going through as well. So all of that was to try and force me. I wanted to change my brain. So I said I was always curious what a concussion felt like. So I gave myself the safest concussion possible, which is self-inflicted in a way. So that's something that kind of
That's
happened.
something I wonder with something like the Saturn being here, because Saturn, well, we want to mold things, right? But Saturn is rocks. Saturn's like your head in a sense, as right, and so it's bones, it's sticks and stones and bones, and it's hard things. It's things that don't necessarily mold and shape very well. Now you got the one guy, he's got the moon and Saturn. Where was he? Smeaton. That's who it was. I don't know why these are all opening like that. But anyways, so here he's got the Saturn and moon, and he was molding and shaping something like cast iron, steel, metal, lead. These are all sort of Saturnius kind of things. And moon is certainly going to add the liquefaction of it. Sun is a bit different. And so I wonder if this isn't molding and shaping metal and wires and harder things, and then also molding and shaping steel, stone, some doing some sculpture and some sculptor type work, things like that, shaping stone.
Looking at the housing, like his was in the fourth house, which is the house of like the earth and like those raw materials in a way, or
Yeah.
like the backbones of things.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. So we'll have a look when we get down to Saturn and Purva Ashadha and get a better sense. But I'm holding Dana on the side of her seat with Mars, and I keep backing up and going everywhere else. So let's let her flow. Let's open the dam and look at the Mars, who can be very competitive for knowledge in their search for truth. And she looks like that's true. They often think they're the ones with the truth. They tend to think they're invincible, especially after some early successes. Influence from other planets would have a strong effect on the education. Additional malefic influence might lead them to more technical fields, while benefics are more likely to lead them to health, wellness, coaching. They seek to use knowledge and wisdom to defeat others. They think they're pretty smart. But Mars doesn't think, he just takes action. Um, and so they do make the good yogis, and there's that flexibility in that in their action, I think, and their ability to also mold and shape their bodies. Since this nakshatra is ruled by Apis, the goddess of primordial water, there can be problems from alcohol consumption. Since the nakshatra relates with Aphrodite, women with this Mars, they can easily weaponize the female form. Even in the Iraq War, we find the weaponization of women's rights, which is a theme of Purva Ashadha. That's one thing we saw a lot of. We'll get down to here pretty quick. Mars rules over brothers and boyfriends in a women's life. The men who are more or less equal to her. She will be attracted to pretty boys, handsome, intellectual, broad-minded, liberal, most often too liberal. They likely these folks will have brothers who are spiritual, stylish, well-traveled. They might be competitive fields of higher studies, athletic, business, art, and design. Is your boyfriend a pretty boy, Dana? He does look a
I
little.
think so.
He's a bit pretty. Yeah.
Yeah, blue eyes. Yeah. And it's interesting because my Mars is in my seventh house, and we met because he was my scuba diving instructor,
I was going to say,
who's like from the water.
yeah, you're a little masculine
Yeah.
shade. Um, so that kind of thing, interesting. He also did he was doing like jet ski rentals or something like that, wasn't he? Also,
We were managing dive center, like he does diving and fishing. So he
okay,
always worked with water themes, and now sailing, of course. So
your man is fully into the water. Um,
yes. For all that, his mom used to have a business of water purification systems. So he worked in that before becoming a diver. So water has been like a thing in our relationship.
and the fishing is the critters in the water, and the water purification is purifying, taking all the little critters out of the water. So things like this interesting. So it's your, yeah, watery kind of man you got there. So since Mars is our activity, Purva Ashadha becomes the main field of activity. So with the water, they tend to move with a nice flow like water. They like to learn and teach through direct experience. They can be somewhat aggressive, competitive teachers. They might even find themselves in competition with their own students. Although there's a side to them that might seem open-minded and liberal, they only espouse these virtues for their own gain. It's possible that they have some military training, shooting and marksmanship, and perhaps even horseback riding, which in modern times maybe like the bicycle. Um, there's that sense, you sometimes see the mermaids. They always ride the seahorses, right? So you get a bit of horses in here too. So now you'll always remember the horses with Purva Ashadha. And so you get that marksmanship, perhaps capable of handling themselves, very good at handling themselves. They can be quite good at strategy, sports, military, policing, all of that sort of stuff. Leo, they like to show off how smart they are. And so you get some film directors, you get quantum mechanics. Here's a cyclist. There's a few cyclists with this. What else are they going? It's funny, it's a lot of women. I don't know what these women's boyfriends or partners are into. For the man, I know like he's into Goa. He's beach life in Goa, basically. So all the guys he know are probably into the water and swimming and all of that sort of thing. There's some bankers. Oh, interesting. Some cyclists, some downhill cyclists, really hardcore cyclists here. With this, Michael McCaddy's also on cycle. Vikram Shukleshwar motorbike, but I'm just trying to think what some of his friends are. I'm not really sure. Leon Tolstoy. So you get this competitiveness a little bit in the higher learning field for a couple of these guys. Some daredevils, a lot of daredevils here. Cyclists, motorbike daredevils as well. Sprinters, singers.
I like all these people except for Amber Heard.
Yeah, they're cool. I would say all of these people are cool. Like they're pretty cool, man. Yeah, they really are. They're cool, they're likable, they're tough. You like these people. They're into sports, they take risks. Yeah, they travel the world. Amber Heard, crazy bitch. I love um, so you get some of that going. Patty Smith's probably been described the same. You like him and love him. It's not like crazy bitch isn't a bad thing.
Let's look at the rest of Amber Heard's chart.
Amber Heard's chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a look.
The Ashwini, there it is.
And so there is that like she weaponized the feminine rights, right? She weaponized the kind of Me Too movement. She weaponized this sort of thing. She has no personality. Let's just see what I've got for her. Chart notes. Yeah, so she didn't have a birth time, and I was kind of all over the place. Let's just have a look at it from her moon chart here. As you see, they probably grew up with violence in the home and this sort of thing. But that was the mother is as angry as the father, you could say, in this sort of case. But there was that aggressive. This Mars is also being aspected by Rahu. She's also got an exalted sun, so she's got the big ego to go with it. Sort of thing. Her whole life revolves around sex and secrets and taboos. Rahu is that like a magnet. She's just drawn to that, and especially drawn to someone like Johnny Depp, right? This is her sexual partners in the 8th house. This is how she sees relationships in the 7th house. And so she's very, very immature. And Mercury is there debilitated Jupiter's going one back, and so there's the litigation and the divorce and the breakups and lots of big problems, and right, just these immature relationships. She doesn't have capacity to have a mature adult relationship, really. That's what I would say about Amber Heard. Um, and really, in a sense, like Purva Ashadha is a little bit about that. It's sort of weaponizing those women's rights and that feminine side of things, and that's going to make it difficult to have a relationship as well. She's the woman that'll, go up and slap someone and say, "Oh my God, that man just slapped me." So, and they're kind of weaponizing the peaceful nature of people in a certain degree as well. Helps make them pretty good at business. And that kind of thing. There's some bankers sort of people here as well. So, not afraid to take risks at all. It's funny, you look at some of these. Oh, maybe that's not quite true. No, not really. It's funny, you see a lot of like engineers, you see a lot of physics going on in this. The physics of flow, in a sense. Dwight Eisenhower, Amber Heard. Let's look at Patti Smith, because she seems to have a lot of things coming up here as well. So 601, A rating for memory. She's got this all going on in her. So this is her songwriting and her storytelling, all going on in the second house. And she's singing like she's the punk Gloria Daughter. So harsh voice, harsh lyrics, harsh stories. Probably even stories about rape and stories about, right, kind of the problems that women face. Becomes very much a narrative in life for her. What is it? The sun is in Purva Ashadha, the 10th house, and so she's known for it. That's the speaking and singing we saw a lot of there. And then the Mars is the first and sixth lord. And so, yeah, singing and stories about all that imbalance and all that, right? All those sort of tough guy men. She's like, well, for a woman, she's very masculine in a lot of ways as well. Maybe it's burning out some of that femininity to a certain degree. But yeah, I think that's relating a lot with her storytelling. And I wonder as well, right? So this is also relating a lot of pressure for her to lead and to be maybe that pressure of being a female lead sort of idea comes into here as well. And so that Mars and Sun certainly is burning out some of the femininity of this and masculizing it to a certain degree. So trying to think too, if they're not, we see someone like the film director, we see Francis Ford Coppola, Walt Disney, if they're not sort of molding fire and light in some way, steel, fire, metal, fire, light, handling light, this is what Mars represents. And so Alexander Graham Bell, right, make the telephone. He was also working with a lot of deaf people. Dwight Eisenhower, well, he was tapping, or no, that was the other guy tapping phones. And so, but I wonder, there's some surrealism going on. Kristen Gilbert, she was killing her patients, but I think she was one of these nurses. She was putting them into cardiac arrest and then trying to save them. And then of course some of them died while she was doing that. So that was some of that savior kind of thing. And there is a little bit here, that preacherness, that it's a bit of savior energy. This is where I was getting confused with the Purva Falguni as well, because this also had some of that savior energy, that rescuer energy also seemed to be going on in the Purva Ashadha. Maybe the lifeguard energy, the mermaid who who saves you when your ship sinks and carries you to shore. Look at the drug dealer as well, and he was a kind of a dirtbag drug dealer, but he would save, he would also help save life to a certain degree. So maybe you do get some of that, very actively trying to save and actively trying to help people in different ways. Possible. Possible. Got a couple serial killers. Amber Frey also has this. Christine Gilbert. Amber Heard, the crazy bitch, crazy bitch, crazy bitch. So I'm not saying anything, Dana. I'm really not.
I am a bit crazy in my own way, but I am addicted to true crime. I think I've said this like a lot of times. So
Okay.
I don't know if that plays out something, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. If I wasn't who I am, I would have studied criminology or like detective or something like that.
Most of these serial killers here, we know them because of Anne Rule. She was huge true crime novelist, massive true crime novelist. Um, and so that's most of these serial killers. That's why we know about their lives and their birth times and all of that, because Anne Rule went out and did all of that work for us. So that true crime going on there. So there is some of this going on. There's a couple of doctors, there's that sense as well. Jack Welch, he was like General Electric, the CEO of that to a certain degree. Anti-corruption, a little bit going on here. Where is here, there on the third? Sure, that's interesting because this third one is the third pada is the Pushkara pada, and so it's looking for the balance. It's the Libra. I really get a sense that the second pada is the most difficult one to balance in this, because it's that imbalance, and everything else in here seems to be looking for some kind of balance, and especially this third one is looking for that balance of Libra, libertarians, freedom lovers, Freda Kahlo. I don't know, I get a sense you might have some similarities with her to a certain degree. Mary Pickford, also very sort of a tough woman. Cheryl was very much she's one of these people, she knows everything about the forest. I don't know if I know anybody who knows the forest as well as Cheryl, and that's getting quite close to Dana as well. So interesting. There's a couple transgenders with that have this position as well. Jim Carrey, Cynthia Braziel. I get a sense with some of the women, this is also women trying to make it in a man's world to a certain degree with some of these placements. Not in all cases, but some of them certainly seem to have that. Nancy Splunger in the punk rock group, Cynthia Braziel in robotics. Shannon Doherty, she was known as kind of the bad girl, bad girl, bad girl. So a little bit. And I'm sure like when you were young, Dana, I'm sure you were probably the worst girl in your community and culture. You're probably the key bad girl around there.
I don't know about being the bad girl because I've always been like very good, but it's true that for where I grew up, which was Saudi Arabia,
Exactly.
everything I was saying was like, you are crazy, you are like the devil almost,
Yeah.
like women's rights, all of this really awakened a lot of things. And especially when you said the no childhood thing, because I really don't remember myself as a child, like all my games were for something, like everything I was playing or reading was like, for women's rights, or I'm gonna leave this place and I'm gonna change it all,
Fight
all that
back.
fighting. And I
Yeah.
related a lot with that in a man's world, what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much there. Yeah. So it's also like this all depends on where a person is, right? Like in the West, you're a very nice girl. But when you grew up, you were
Yes,
a
but
devil,
there.
so There's that too. And that's part of Purva Ashadha, it's that flexibility. One place you're nice, one place you're good. One place you're nice, one place, and there's that hiddenness to it. There's something else going on, it seems, with these folks all the time.
The theme you said of East and West. All my life has been like this East and West also bridging
Yeah.
together.
And I can see that some of the people I know doing philosophy, some of the Indian girls I know that have this placement, they're really into the Western culture, living the Goa life, even the Goa drug dealer guy, very much blending these two sides. So very, very much like this. We get someone, Jack Anderson, the founder of investigative journalism. So really, really going in and trying to figure things out. Tom Selleck was kind of Magnum PI. We know him as that. So it's interesting. They're kind of solving something. They're trying to fix something, overcome something. And from quite a young age, there's that sort of challenge. Yeah, you get some of these tough women, some doctors. Oh, there are definitely. Well, that's yeah, that forest, knowledge of the forest. Just want to come back up and see something here quickly. Yeah, there does seem to be a little heat and a little bit like tonics and elixir kind of things coming into here. There can still be a herbalism, but the herbalism will probably go into tonics and elixirs more than remaining them natural, I think. Try to liquefy those sorts of things. Because there are a couple people here I know, they've got great knowledge of herbalism and the forest.
You froze again.
Oh, I am frozen again. I can hear you. You can't hear me. Dum, dum. Yeah, it froze Emmett in a perfect spot. I don't know if you can see him, but Emmett's doing a little thing like that. Perfect picture. Hello. There we go. I'm back. We're all back and recording. We'll bring this back up again. There we go. So I don't know why my mom has such bad internet. She's old. She probably has the cheapest internet account you can get, and this is how it works.
Yeah, it's the upload that's low at your place, at her place.
Yeah, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's Red Deer. Yeah, it's kind of a small city I'm in Canada. Canada's very provincial. Even our cities are like villages. It's very, very sweet, innocent little Canada. Anyways, I'm enjoying it.
I really want to go there after everything you guys say. Like it sounds so ideal. I really want to go to that fairy place.
Yeah, you would love to go crazy on the West Coast. You would love it. Let me know if you're ever going. Maybe you could probably teach there if you ever went. You could do a workshop or something.
I hope so. I can go there someday. And you were saying just now about elixirs, like there's something with elixirs. I actually love doing my own little things with oils, like Ayurvedic little things, or not so much with food, because we spoke about this, like I don't like cooking or too much the food, but cosmetic things, or like little, I call them my elixirs, and it's just for me. I don't sell them or anything. I just love playing like alchemical little things.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I would connect if you went to the West Coast. I would connect you with. Oh no, that's Steph P. But I would connect you with Stephanie, who also does herbal medicines there. Really good old friend. And she knows everything about the fairies. She's just like the fairy godmother. So, yeah, so there's all that kind of going on here. This fourth pada, this is getting a little bit sexier, a little bit racier. I don't know about Cynthia Braziel, but Shannon Doherty had that sort of more of that sexual bad girl. Anastasia's a bit bad girl. Asia's certainly a bad girl. Nancy Splungern, very bad girl from the sexual. So there's much more of that sexuality seems to come out in this fourth pada with this sort of thing. And that seems a little bit less in the, certainly less in the third pada. A little bit, but not so much. And seems a little bit less. The really crazy one seems to be the second pada, and this really sexual one seems to be the fourth pada. This first pada mostly, I think, just looking for attention, and the third is more looking for balance and that sort of thing. So, still wondering why there's two killers that have that, and the doctors and the nurses sort of. There's some lawyers here as well. Anyways, so we get to Mercury now. So this is anyway, some more knowledge of spiritual art, music, pretty much seems any placements here. Elixirs, music, spirituality, spiritual bhajan comes into here. I think the Mercury becomes a little bit more instrumental. They're very good speakers, of course. A lot of the women in this position tend to be lesbian or at least bisexual. Sexually active as adolescents. Again, Mercury's that adolescent sort of energy. And so there's a slight whiff of teenage prostitution around all of these. But perhaps it's just a general openness. God, my writing sometimes I just cringe at it. A message of alternative sexuality. So Mercury can swing both ways to a certain degree. Of course, we have no proof of this, but we get someone like Ghislaine Maxwell who has this. She was really involved in bringing these teenage students involved. Joan of Arc, she was a flower girl, but then she went in and began playing with the boys. She was accused. She had some harsh accusation against her, but they mostly found her clear. There's a lot of tantric sexuality going on here as well, sort of teaching that sort of stuff. Pope Francis, very open-minded. For a pope, extremely open-minded in a lot of ways. Here we get also Johannes Kepler and Nostradamus. So there's some of that laws of planetary motion going on here. That's that fluid motion. There's the counting, the analyzing of motion perhaps going on here. Global in their outlook as well. John Patterson dealing with weather and these sort of patterns. I know there's been a couple people I noticed in the other one with Mars and with Mercury. Some surfers tended to have this positions as well. Again, that activity by the water going on. Quite a few surfers have this. I have Tofino Surf Place, so I know a few of them. Not many. It's quite a small list, actually, if we look at Mercury of Purva Ashadha. Not really a whole lot of people going on here. That Mercury goes into his own house, his own Navamsha when he gets into the second pada. The second pada seems to be very powerful Mercury, right? These great scientists dealing with motion, Ratan Tata, big industrialists. Joseph Stalin was basically, you could also call him an industrialist to a certain degree. A couple poets, but they seem to be very good with the numbers and the analysis and measuring movement. Ratan Tata, he makes everything steel, he even makes cars in the US now. We see someone like Alfredo Ferrari with the first Mercury in the first pada of this, automotive sort of engineer. But you're mostly seeing, anyway, some confused, you could say a lot of sexuality, some confused sexuality. Maybe part of the problem with Mercury is it hit at a young age, right? At that adolescent age, perhaps. First two padas, very much. We get some flute players, some rappers, a bit of sound, a lot of sound and balance going on in the third pada of this with the Mercury. Interesting to see Ray Dolby there. Almost like they're analyzing the sound more, counting something, maybe teaching. Maybe they're even more into teaching students. These younger students, I'm not sure. Purva Ashadha, David Lynch. Hard to find a lot holding these people together. There is a lot of singers here. A lot of musicians seem to have this Mercury. But nothing's really coming out about it. Let's have a look. I don't know so much about some of these. Let's have a look at someone like Tata, the big industrialist. Yeah, so he didn't have a birth time given, but you can always, if you look hard enough, the Indian astrologers, people have done his chart, and they sort of they give him this sort of an ascendant Rajan Tata. And so this is a big industrialist sort of a guy. A lot of times you see that with the Mars and Saturn influences on his sixth house, both of them are aspecting there. But his Mercury relating with his work, his job, going into the first, everything seems to be in Mula, which to me is more relating with the molten steel and all of that. And so he was a steel magistrate. So this Mercury in Purva Ashadha is maybe some really flexible steel or something like that. The aluminums and stuff like that. Hard to really say. He was an engineer. But yeah, I got into steel, radio, electronics, business management. Yeah, tons of awards he won. So anyways, I'm not really sure how Purva Ashadha fits in.
I was gonna say something, but maybe it doesn't make any sense. But I just saw like Shakira in that list somewhere, and because Purva Ashadha, I've been hearing all this time, it has this background energy of the story of Venus and Hephaestus. I also don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
So maybe these people were cheated on because that's what happened with Shakira. So it just gave me that idea that maybe nothing ties them, but we don't know. Maybe there's been some like cheating on them or some secrets, something that is not like maybe public. And I don't know a lot of them, so also I don't.
Yeah, there's well, there is certainly a lot of in the Purva Ashadha, all kinds of relationship problems are going on here. With the Mercury, like it says, it seems to be very sort of flexible in their sexuality. Mercury is, if we want to think about something that's plastic and malleable and things like that, Mercury is the most malleable planet. And so maybe these people are very, very molded. Some of them do seem to be more mentors, but maybe there is that sort of molding students, and maybe as they were molded as a student sort of idea. They're very good students, right? John Milton, Kepler, Nostradamus, even Emily Carr now, a university's named after. very powerful, independent. The women who have it, Ghislaine Maxwell, Joan of Arc, Christina Onassis. Some alcohol and drug addictions going on here. Maybe
Did
it's
Alan Watts work with someone?
What's that?
Did Alan Watts work with someone? Or was he known to have a co-collaborator? Because like if you look at Brad Pitt, Will Smith, Shakira, Stan Lee, Keith Richards, Ellen DeGeneres, these are all people that kind of have some sort of association that's a part of their fame.
Yeah, there is some of that. I get a sense with a lot of them, it's just a very immature approach to higher philosophy in a sense, but an immature approach to sexuality. That sort of immaturity side of things is coming into here. Yeah, some of them we take quite seriously, but even Joseph Stalin, it's like this wasn't a developed ideology. Osho's as well, very sort of flexible ideology, very flexible in their beliefs. Maybe their beliefs to fit the situation to a certain degree.
Pope Francis, the current Pope?
What's that?
Is Pope Francis the current Pope?
Yeah, I think he is. He's
And he's
very
opening up to sexuality, right? To the
Yeah.
Catholic Church. So he's changed, letting everything happen, really.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, he's really opened the Catholic Church up to modern sexuality. In a lot of ways, that's not appreciated by a lot of Catholics. Again, it's that flexible nature of his ideology. It's not a solid ideology that he has. It's very can change to suit the situation. Someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, again, we talked about the Purva Ashadha not being very truthful. And so I think with Mercury here as well, the stories, it all becomes very flexible. The story, the narrative, the numbers also just fudge the numbers to a certain degree. Hate to say that about great astrologers like Kepler and Nostradamus, but there was at the end, there was a bit of fudging of the numbers. They didn't quite get it right.
And I think that Nostradamus too, a lot of like the myth of him is what kept him going rather than his accuracy.
Yeah, exactly. And even his predictions, they're these foggy narratives that can kind of go to fit any situation to a certain degree. This is a this is a great this is what people are always saying about astrology. Oh, I can just fit any situation. It doesn't matter. And so this is kind of like
I think you just nailed it there with Purva Ashadha for Mercury, where they speak in ways that make it seem okay, but really they haven't really said anything, like Brad Pitt and Will Smith. Like they're just known for coming off as these wise people, but they're never really actually saying anything, especially the actors. And Alan Watts, like he has great stuff. And I love him and I follow him. Like he's half of the quotes I read, but still like his stuff is kind of like, well, this is kind of useless in some way. You know, like it's just so speaking with those illusion narratives, I think is the right way to Purva Ashadha. It's they talk that bright spark, that bright light, but they don't create it, right? They just
yeah, it is. It's a lot of kind of talk with them to a certain degree. Here's Will Smith's chart.
Shit.
I find his chart hilarious because he's got the Jupiter Ketu. He's famous for the slap. That's all anybody knows Will Smith for the slap. That's his most, whatever he's done, it doesn't matter anymore. He's just the most famous slap in the world with all that house stuff. So so there's Will Smith. And then it's the talk and very immature relationships in a sense, right? Somebody teases your girlfriend and you've got to get up there on stage and slap them. So there is that immaturity going on there with him. I don't really know a lot about him, but very flexible with his use of words and language. I think too, just see this. because he used to, in his earlier stuff, he used to use some different sort of lingos. He would fall back into some of the black lingo a little bit. Fresh Prince of Bel Air or something, whatever that was. He was like the poor street guy going up and living with the rich people sort of idea. What else do we get from this? Yeah, well, Emmett sort of talked about these people always working with others as well, a little bit, little groups as well. I think a lot of sort of group activity. That's usually Mercury is the kind of group of friends kind of thing.
Yeah, like Shakira and Stan Lee, like there's people around them for sure that got them to where they are in some way, because like I think
Well, Stan Lee, he sold out to the military industrial complex a long time ago. He's a cartoonist. I don't know if you know him, illustrator. Marvel, is he the Marvel comics guy?
he's
Yeah,
Spider-Man, Captain America, like all of the big Marvel people is him except for Wolverine.
yeah, okay. So yeah, he's done quite a bit, but yeah, so he's been shaped and molded, and his writing and his work is
Yeah.
shaped and molded, and it's
And the
all
main artist is Jack Kirby. Like it's not even him that drew, like he just helped with the ideas of it and storylines. The actual person who did the pictures of them is Jack Kirby. It's
okay.
another person, yeah.
So so yeah, we get some of this happening. Interesting. A lot of nice music here though. Like you get the Ray Dolby, his whole mission was sound quality and purity. Then you got Matt Malloy, the flute master. Mac Miller, he's a rapper or something.
Unique voices is what it looks like too. Jean Chrétien has a unique way of speaking. Alan Watts has a unique way of speaking. Paul Newman, Brad Pitt, Will Smith, they all have unique ways of communicating.
Yeah, something unique in their art and their communication way as well. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So we get to Jupiter now. Ethics and aesthetics are one, says Ludwig Weissenstein, who was a linguist and did a lot of work with language, actually. The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. So that's something as well. We talked about the shaped and molded. And I like to use the word absorb kind of works here as well. I like to use absorbent with Ketu stuff more than anything because it's empty and it absorbs a lot. But Purva Ashadha is also, it is like a sponge as well. It does absorb a lot of water. It absorbs that emotional the feel of a place. It's very, very sensitive. Just like water can pick up any vibration, very sensitive to all of that. So Purva Ashadha also, so they absorbed everything. They're like a sponge, taking it all in. They're usually highly learned and without formal education, with or without formal education, quick learners, abundant knowledge, likely to be liberal in love, finding their ideal partner sometimes difficult, expansive emotions. If you and I are to live religious lives, it mustn't be that we talk a lot about religion, but that our manner of life is different. It is my belief that only if you try to be helpful to other people will you in the end find your way to God. So he's just saying, like, it's not about any of this mumbo jumbo, the outsearch, you have to take action. There's no end to the adventures that we have if only we see them with open eyes. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become absolutely free, and that your very existence is an act of rebellion. That's something you seem to see. That seems to be a theme, a big theme with Purva Ashadha. Their whole existence is an act of rebellion, to a certain ways. And that's kind of like, well, if Venus is the guru of the Asuras, that's exactly what Venus is. Just by existing, he's rebellion. Just by being beautiful, you're rebellion. Just by the beautiful woman just walking by, the renunciate brahmacharya saint, she's rebelling against him, right? So just by being there, they're kind of causing problems. It's nothing sometimes not what they're doing, it's just by being. So with Jupiter, we see on some really powerful placements. Military leaders, strategists, naval commanders. We see more civil engineers. A lot of economists seem to have this Jupiter and Purva Ashadha. Lots of philosophers. What can we say? Biochemists, dermatologists, doctors, some of the most highly educated sort of people have this position. And again, whether it's formal education or if they're self-educated, either way. And these are leaders. It's funny, there's actually, I know two people here. It's maybe because I spend so much time living at tourist places, but I've got friends who give these guided walks. It's like tour of Varanasi, guided walk through Varanasi. So these, with Jupiter and Purva Ashadha, they become very much these sort of guides, almost like tour guides. These are people who are very much involved with being father figures, showing people direction, showing people how they're done. Really, I think they put a lot of time, effort, and energy into the next generation that's upcoming. So this kind of thing, usually very spiritual. I'm looking at a lot of the people I know. I seem to have quite a few students that have, or clients that have this placement. Yeah, these are the a lot of them anyways, especially in the first and second padas. These are my students who are gurus already, kind of thing. They're already teachers. They're already very knowledgeable, very highly learned, very spiritual. Couple of them are kind of like preachers. A lot of them are preachers. And so as much as something like Sun and Sagittarius gives a permission to preach, or sorry, entitlement to preach, Jupiter gives sort of a permission to preach, a permission to teach, a permission to open people's eyes to a certain degree, and a permission to be the guide, be the leader. And so you get some big boys have this. B.B. King, George Foreman, some big boxers, fighters. Few people with the name King in their names is interesting. Well, I mentioned Robertson Davies, the guy who wrote The Fifth Business, the novel that came up earlier. He was like the master of Massey College, which was it was like a Catholic college attached to the University of Alberta. So he was like a dean of a university. Great writer, great storyteller, great intellectual he was. What else? Wow, we got lots going on here. Let's just have a look at someone like Robertson Davies' chart. He was really one of my early gurus growing up, reading his novels and things like this. And a lot of his work, he was talking about the difference between the Protestants, the Anglicans, and the Catholics in Canada, and sort of this and how the influence on the villages in Canada and that sort of thing. He also wrote quite extensively. Where is his Jupiter? There it is. I'm not sure. He didn't have a good birth time, but I came up with this one myself somehow. But his Jupiter, he was very religious, you could say, molded by the Catholic faith, you could say. And he's the guy, he wrote The Fifth Business and some of these other ones. Again, a lot of his main characters were kind of also like university professors or doctors or priests. And one of the main characters of this trilogy was studying the angels, traveling all over the world, studying angels. And he'd had this sort of a dream or a vision of the angel, and he was looking for that angel again. Not just the angels, but the saints as well. and did a lot of research on saints. I used to study all that stuff back when before I got into all the Indian Hindu stuff. I was doing all the Christian stuff. So we get that. It's funny, I see a couple names like Prashant Hollywood and Parikrama brother Jai Ditchwich. These three guys are like, these are like three of my really close India brothers, you could say. These guys, they've got so much knowledge and they've got so much wisdom of all of this stuff. And they're such easygoing, chilled out people. They're just, yeah, just really, really wonderful. A little preachy, but that's okay. I love them. Petty Krama brother, it's interesting to see him because he's kind of sandwiched between these two people that are really kind of priests. And he's a welder actually, but he kind of lives at the ashrams and just one of these guys I got along with really, really well. Just right away, we were like brothers, did some of the Petty Krama together. And then I saw him later after he settled down in an ashram. So, and Sarah's also big into Vedic astrology. Ma Yoga is a yoga studio, sound therapies and that sort of stuff. Yoga therapy, sound healing, acupuncture, a lot of that stuff. Jasmine of Tofino's also into all that. Carly Ma she does these interesting facials. But again, working with women's products still coming up here to a certain degree. Funny to see Jessica in with all these other quite feminine women. Jessica's a bit of a tomboy, but she'll probably end up doing taxidermy and stuff like that. She's probably the only women up there on the way up in northern Canada on the kind of homesteading sort of stuff, shooting guns and riding horses. Canada's great, Danny. You should come. I love it. And if you want a really interesting perspective of Canada, read one of Robertson Davies' books. The Fifth Business was, I think, his most famous one. So then we get into the second one. We're getting into more, it almost seems into more kind of policing sort of area, dealing with the imbalances and things like this, imbalance ideologies, that sort of thing, anti-corruption, Nazi officers. What else? Still very, very college. Bipin Bahati, there's another Vedic astrologer with this one. These are priests, Brahmin people, basically, is what they are. Yeah, basically, there's a few, like, hard to call George Foreman a Brahmin, but why not? He might have been a boxer, but later he was selling like George Foreman grill. He was like a nice TV presenter that everybody trusts, George Foreman. That kind of thing. Peter Sellers, comedian. A little bit working national security type issues. Oh, interesting. There's some, yeah, I guess maybe with Foreman and BB King you can see it. But in the people I know, there's almost a connection with gangs, actually. They're kind of fighters, enforcers a little bit in gangs like George Foreman. But running the fighting, running the policing sort of sense of it here. There is a bit of a sense with Purva. This kind of relates with the Purva Falguni, but in Purva Ashadha, like Purva Falguni is known as the savior. Purva Ashadha is a little bit like that as well too. They're kind of, that's that humanistic nature. They want to save you from yourself, maybe, or something. But they're a king. There's something to be sort of something for us to reach for or follow their example, maybe, is what helps save us or protect us. All of that sort of thing. Interesting to see Wilbur Cohen. This is the guy who set up the architect of the welfare state in North America and the US. He's right in there with Karl Marx. And so it's interesting, but Elisa Milano. So interesting. Certainly the third pada seems to have a bit of like almost Marxism involved in it. It's that sense of fairness that we see. It's like today's woke kind of culture. Everybody's, oh, they're a bunch of Marxists. But it's that idea of fairness rather than justice. As really, we haven't talked much of that as we've been going through this, but it does come up a little bit, and certainly you can see it. And that the ideology almost becomes everything in a sense. And that seems to be the strongest in the third pada. And it's that humanistic sort of tendency that gets maybe it just gets blended with humanism, get blended with bureaucracy kind of sense, right? And it all goes awry. Because I'm not against socialism or any of these. I can see the humanistic tendency that's driving from, but you can also see how it goes quite awry and makes problems. No, we're racing to the end again now. We'll make it. We've got 20 minutes here for us to get all the way through a couple more. So this is Venus in Purva Ashadha. This is Venus in her home. So there's gonna be that really higher sense of aesthetics, higher knowledge of aesthetics, erotic dancers, Shakti dancers, Bhakti, Kamyaka Devi and Assam I mentioned. Really they tend to believe in equity and fairness in an extreme way. The image is often more important to them than the substance or true merit. So we're going to find virtue signalers here. This is hard for them to connect with the deeper inner spiritual truths. Relationships can suffer because they do not appreciate one person more than any of the others. Very equitable. They typically have a lot of love for water, the water emotional side of life. And so Venus represents the women, the sisters, the wives, the girlfriends, all of that sort of stuff. But again, we're still looking a lot of sort of microbiology, a lot of biology, psychology, philosophy, history, just a love for all of that. We are finding a bit more of the bodybuilding in here. Joseph Pilates, he's famous for Pilates for the core workout. He was actually a bodybuilder. Anders Breivik, he wrote the manifesto. He's the guy that killed all those kids on the island in Sweden, I think it was, or Finland. Anyways, he went there and shot all those kids. And so that's yeah. So we got some more Osho. Osho's got a ton of placements here. We should actually, let's open his chart and have a quick look. So all his placements are going into the 8th house. And so even if you look at what the Osho ashrams today, these things they're not preying on children, but they're really sort of molding and shaping and sort of what do they call it? Grooming. I think that's the big word they use these days. And so Osho was a groomer of the highest sorts, in a lot of ways. I hate to really put it that way. It's that open mind, it's the sex and the superconscious. And so he was working with all those taboos. He's got everything's in the 8th house. And then you combine that with the Purva Ashadha. And so you're going to get all those sexual taboos. Yeah, young, beautiful, old, young, immature, everything. His whole world revolves around, well, this Saturn, his Gieshta, stirring up things in relationships and his own relationships, stirring things up. And so all of that kind of stuff. So there's Osho. Yeah, there's a bit of handyman work here again, making things nice and worrying about the image, how things look really nice. Interesting. Angel did water and sewer type work. So does Mike Tuff, also involved in a bit of that kind of thing. And so it is still that watery nature, making it flow, cleaning, purifying. Some really beautiful entertainers here. I got Michael Jordan. Oh, basketball. There we go. So it's interesting that grooming. You see Michael Jordan, two of the greatest basketball players in the world, have Purva Ashadha placements. The other guy that I can't remember his name that Emmett knows, and Michael Jordan. So these new guys,
LeBron James.
LeBron James. Yeah, okay. Okay, LeBron James. All I know is the what I read for news, nobody can stand him. That's the only thing I know to read for LeBron James. He does seem to talk about a lot of things he doesn't know anything about.
And I think people are jealous of like Wayne Gretzky. People didn't like him because he was a goody two shoes. I think the same thing's going on with LeBron, where he's a goody two shoes, so he's
Yeah,
getting that
there
kind
is
of
that.
attention.
They're virtue signaling in a
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, so nobody likes them because of that.
And Jordan was just an asshole with everyone. Like no one liked him. He was just mean to
Michael
everyone.
Jordan?
Yeah, he was
Okay.
mean to everyone. He knew better than everyone all the time. Huge gambling issues. Definitely
Okay.
some things with women that don't get talked about.
Okay.
But those are known for sure with Jordan.
Yeah, I'm sure it's all there. So yeah, so Frank Sinatra, there seems to be some jealousy or something as well, or the resentment against this people could be jealousy. You could put it that way. Because there's a sense of they're kind of perfect people. Um, geez, even I look at a couple of the people I know, and it's like these people, they know math, they know science, they're doing yoga, they're doing their asana, they got beautiful, deep devotion for the most part. They've got a few skeletons in their closet, maybe, but that surface, on the surface, some of these are like perfect specimens of human beings. I don't know how else to put it. But there really is almost that perfection to them. You get a couple crime bosses, some fighters, founder of Aikido. Interesting. Indira Gandhi and Robert F. Kennedy, two leaders that were assassinated. Got any more? No. And that's with what? That's with that third pada. Venus. That's funny. You wouldn't think it would be so bad because of Venus is. It's like in the third pada, he ends up in his own Navamsha as well, and so you'd think that would be giving really really good results. Pushkara pada plus its own, and it is. I guess some of these are like big time leaders, crime boss, founder of Aikido, Larry King. These are kind of tops in their fields to certain degrees. Rhonda Woodfill, highway killer. Claude Rivera, a thief. Oh yeah, there's Hinton. I probably spelled his name wrong.
No,
Uh,
his name is fine. It's spelled
okay.
correctly. You just have to put sailing and diving instead of jet skis.
Oh, okay. Jet ski diving. Yeah, sorry about that.
But I forgot that he has Venus and he has Saturn in Purva Ashadha. I don't know how I forgot, but all these themes with water, and he actually is very interested in welding. He hasn't done it yet or anything, but he does like working with, metal. And also another thing he was very interested in that you talked about was the 3D printing and the
Okay.
molding and things like this. So it's also coming back to me now.
Yeah. Yeah. You're gonna have to get him some
Oh,
Play-Doh
I think you're frozen
for his
again.
birthday or something. I froze again, didn't I? I did. You guys froze. It's gonna crash. That's gonna be it. It's funny, you're frozen, but the traffic's still moving behind Emmett. Oh, something happened. I can't. Oh, you're moving again. We're back.
Yes, you're back. I don't know if you said something. Sorry.
No, I was yeah, just talking about the freezing. I'll do that until it unfreezes. Um, what was I saying here? Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, the welding. So a couple welders, getting that molten molding and shaping. Um, yeah. So let's It's interesting. A few of these people have been assassinated. Jean Cabot got assassinated for his illustrations. Few illustrators going on here as well. Very lovely place for Venus in some sense. But they do sort of like, there's almost like a, I don't know. Again, it's that sense of virtue signaling, but it's not always virtue. It's not always like, oh, look, I did something right. It's more that innocence of, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. In a way, you know what I mean? It's like that. It's like I look at someone like this Jean Cabot, and he was one of these guys assassinated in the Charlie Hobo. But Charlie Hobo was really like, they were really pushing a lot of buttons. And it's like, okay, oh, you guys froze again. Oh, there you're back. And so they were pushing a lot of buttons. And so it's like, okay, you didn't do anything wrong, but it's like they were kind of asking for it at the same time. You didn't break any laws, you didn't do anything wrong, but so there seems to be a bit of that going on in here too. Yeah. It's like Indira Gandhi. It's like Indira Gandhi's assassination. It's like she didn't do anything wrong. She went in, she stormed one of the Sikh temples to get some whatever, some terrorists, you could say, from her perspective. And she sort of said, oh, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I was getting these, but then she also kept Sikhs as her own bodyguards. And so that sort of righteousness that didn't allow her to really connect with reality. It's like, what's wrong with that? No, they'll protect me. They're higher than that. But it's like, no, you just inflamed the whole Sikh community. You might want to avoid the Sikhs a little bit. So these kind of things. Someone like Claude Riviere, he broke out of jail so many times. It was incredible. He used a helicopter to break out of jail once. I'm sure there's movies written about that guy. Yeah, he seems like, you know, the suave, stereotypical suave French thief sort of fraud, can talk his way out of anything. I think that was Claude Riviere that some of that stereotype came from. But I want to get ahead here because we're almost done, and I really do want to do Saturn. Go ahead, punk, make my day, says Clint Eastwood with Saturn and Purva Ashadha. So respect your efforts, respect yourself. Self-respect leads to self-discipline. When you have both firmly under your belt, that's real power, Amit with Saturn and Purva Ashadha. First, I blow a hole in your face. Then I go back inside and sleep like a baby. I guarantee you. So, forgiving and being reconciled to our enemies or our loved ones is not about pretending that things are other than they are. It's not about putting another on the back or turning a blind eye to the wrong. True reconciliation exposes the awfulness, the abuse, the hurt, the truth. It could even sometimes make things worse. It's a risky undertaking, but in the end, it's worthwhile because in the end, only an honest confrontation with reality can bring healing. Superficial reconciliation can only bring superficial healing. So
Gross.
What's that, Emmett?
Gross. Ugh,
Yeah, you got
so
work
much
to do, my
work.
friend.
Yeah, so much
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, Saturn, always got work to do with Saturn. That's so despite the voluminous and often fervent literature on income distribution, the cold fact is that most income is not distributed, it's earned. Since this is an era when many people are concerned about fairness and social justice, what is your fair share of what someone else has worked for? So we see the communists with Jupiter here, and now we seem to see the opposite. Now we got the more conservative sort of ideal coming out with this Saturn. So we get a bunch of Rembrandt had this, but we get some nice philosophers. This Wim Hof. Again, I called him a philosopher, but he's just like freeze and it'll help you. Get cold and it'll save you. And then we got Marcel Proust in search of lost time. That's that patience, I think, comes in, that patience in literature. This guy wrote like 20 pages on the first moment of waking up. It was crazy. I didn't get past it. He wrote 7 volumes. Who's going to read that? And it just keeps going on like that. Anyway, so then we get Thomas Sowell, of kind of a famous conservative philosopher these days. Get Neil Armstrong. There's some of the science coming out in that. We got these people are really concerned about facing reality. Theater, aesthetics, entertainment. They seem to be also working their career, because Saturn is our work, and so their job can go into working also with the watery products. I would think though, if we're thinking about like Purva Ashadha it's like the young, beautiful prostitute. But Saturn goes in there, she's not going to be young and beautiful. She's going to be old and cold and dry and hard. Like, go ahead, make my day, punk. I'll blow a head through your skull and sleep peacefully, I promise you. Right? It's it's a little more brutal going on here. And there's some medical researchers, some Andrea, she worked with the boys. She's pretty tough fighter, actually. We get the Smeaton engineering coming in, that sense of reality, pharmacy, get quite a bit of the fighting also going on. These are kind of hard dudes. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Sonny Liston, David Carpenter was a killer, Anton LaVey, Church of Satan. A lot of people said Emily Carr was basically the Church of Satan as well, because she was kind of a offer rocker, kind of living out in the forest kind of woman. Peaches Geldof, heroin addiction, more civil engineers, electrical engineers, civil engineers, lots of engineering going on with this. Again, it's that sense of reality, really is what they're facing. Prince Andrew, Duke of York. Prince Andrew, he's one of the ones, he's actually, the last thing his mother did before she died was took away all his titles. He was a bad boy. Mama was mad at him. And so he was involved with all that Harvey Weinstein stuff and Epstein Island stuff and all of that. Walt Disney also, he was basically as big a jerk as Prince Andrew, so we can't let him off the hook for anything either. Although he makes those nice, he shapes and molds shapes and molds reality, really, is what Walt Disney's doing for us. Almost literally. It's interesting, still more engineers, quantum physicists. This is a very highly intelligent Saturn, but it's very dry. Its wisdom is focused on reality, really. And there's Emmett down there at the third pada. He's with Walt Disney and Prince Andrew, Immanuel Kant, Peter Kropotkin. He was an anarchist as well. John Patterson, yeah. So there's Candace Owens as well, the radio announcer. So you get some big gurus here, but these people are a little bit more reality faced. Some amazing all the way through Purva Ashadha. We get some mass killers and some serial killers and that kind of thing. And I think part of this is one of the things serial killers want to do is they want to destroy beauty. It's one of their aims. They want to destroy the trust. They want to inflict a little bit of terror and that fear and make it so people can't trust. And so I think in a lot of times the most defenseless does get attacked by and targeted by serial killers. It's like if you really want to make people mad, you don't kill some old lady, some god ugly old lady. You kill the most beautiful young virgin in the room. And then everybody gets inflamed. Everybody gets excited. right? That invigoration. You want to invigorate people? Right? It's as much as the young girl does it when she's alive. You kill her and you'll invigorate everybody. No doubt about it. So I don't know. I think we never make it to the nodes anyways. And so we'll just sort of leave that hanging. But we can quite imagine if this is invigoration, Rahu's going to really invigorate things. Really invigorate. They'll be very, very sensitive to everything. And that cloudiness will come into sex. So
Interesting to have Jesus there.
and we got Jesus there, yeah. Well, he claims to be born from a virgin birth. So there's our cloudiness on Jesus, man. How did he really come about? So there's that. So anyways, we'll leave it at that. It's a pleasure chatting with you guys today. Pleasure going through all of this.
Thank you
Thank-
so much.
Very much. Mahadev.
Mahadev. Bye, guys.